Hi, welcome back guys. This is your sensei, back with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If You Got Harem in Cyberpunk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. In a bit sup, Gloria. Becca flashed a grin as she slipped in after him, hands clasped behind her head. You good? She rolled one shoulder. Good enough. Feisty as always, this one. Is it just the two of you, or should I expect the rest? Nah. Maine rumbled a laugh. We were gonna send Dorio, but she's busy with Sasha. Lucy's out friskin', some Arasaka mooks, and my idiot brother's drunk off his butt. Rebecca clasped both hands behind her head. Sides, Kiwi doesn't like this sit. Pretty mucho. Maine leaned past her. Saw Naruto sprawled out on the couch. That the kid. Gloria moved to block him with her body. No. I know that look. What look? He grinned down his sunglasses at her. I just want to see the chum that saved your life. His grin only grew when she glowered at him. Little young for ya, ain't he? Oh gods, he'd noticed that. It's not like that. Sure. Maine rumbled a low laugh. Whatever you say, I do say. Gloria stomped on his foot, drawing a grunt from him. Drop it, or I swear I'll drop you. Alright. You don't be so overprotective. Maine, I dunno. Becca sauntered over and poked Naruto's cheek. Looks like a pretty normal gonk to me. A hand swept up and slapped her wrist, causing her to jolt back. What the hell? I thought he was asleep. Naruto still was. He hadn't opened his eyes. His breathing remained even. Gloria craned her neck to look his way. He didn't budge. Maine grunted. Good. I dunno. Kinda like it. Rebecca laughed and tried to poke him again. Oh, he's quick. His hand swept out and batted her finger aside. How about this? She grinned, feinted, and tried with the other hand, only to find herself caught yet a fourth time. Soon enough she was occupied trying to get through to him, oblivious to all else. Maine rolled his eyes. Oi, Rebecca, leave the kid be. Nope. She circled round and leaned over Naruto's shoulder, all but draping herself over him to embrace his cheek. Moi, I call dibs. Gloria felt an odd twinge in her heart. She shoved it down, forcing herself to focus. All right, Maine. You got the eddies, sure thing. Maine might be a softie for her, but business was still business. You got the goods. Did you forget who you're talking to? She swatted his arm and padded over to the kitchen's the secret compartment where she'd hidden her yellow jacket and the Sandevistan within. I tucked it away over here. Her fingers closed around empty air. Gloria frowned. She ducked in and reached deeper. Still nothing. She balked and yanked the hidden compartment open fully. Naught but darkness awaited her. Even turned it upside down now, hoping against hope that the jacked implant would somehow fall out the void and appear from thin air. Gone. The implant was gone. Nowhere to be seen. Maine leaned over her. Gloria, don't give me that look. She rounded on him with a hiss. It was here this morning. I hid it while David was getting ready for school. Realization broke like the dawn. He had been lingering around the kitchen early this morning. She'd assumed he was checking in on her, making sure she was all right. Just thinking of it made her queasy. He couldn't. Surely he wouldn't. The risks of chipping something like that in. He'd not dare. He knew better, didn't he? Gloria knew the answer. Her legs buckled. That idiot Maine must have realized it too, or at least saw the horror in her eyes, because he hauled her upright and gripped her by the shoulders. She expected to see anger in his eyes, disappointment at the least. She found none. The big guy actually looked worried for the first time in a long time, and oh, that was a bad sign. He took it, didn't he? Gloria managed a weak nod. Maine clapped a palm to his face. Becca, watch the kid for us. We're going out. Rebecca rounded on them too late. Why me? Hey, come back here. The door slammed shut behind them with a resounding bang. Rebecca focused a baleful glare toward the blonde. Damn it. Might as well get comfortable. Naruto woke to a sudden bang. Bleary blue eyes blinked. Huh. There was some weird girl sitting on his seat. Why in the name of the sage and the nine was there a girl sitting on his seat? Strange-looking girl too, all pale skin and light green hair contrasted by bright red gold eyes, all wrapped up in a little black number of hoodie that really didn't do her justice. She sat sprawled atop him, legs splayed down on either side of him. He took one good long look at her and his brain fizzled spectacularly. His tongue, however, did not. Hey, there, she grinned and focused him a wink. Hey yourself, handsome. Kurama creaked, a blood-red iris open. Well, There are worse ways to wake up. Naruto blinked, lost for a moment. He didn't recognize this ceiling, these walls, any of it. How had he gotten here again? Memories rushed in a heartbeat later. Right, the landing. The accident. He'd healed Gloria and passed out from exhaustion soon thereafter. His ribs still ached abominably, but most of his chakra had recovered. Still felt like he got slapped by a tailed beast, though he craned his neck, frowned now, when he found the apartment empty save for the two of them. "Where's Gloria?" Oh, the girl's grin grew and she all but purred the word. "She your girl." She swayed side to side atop him, humming softly as he tensed beneath her. "David's mom has got it going on. Didn't think she had it in her. Wano, it ain't like that. Who the hell re you, anyway, Becca?" She made no effort to budge, none whatsoever. He heaved an irritated sigh. "Naruto, I told you mine. Now are you gonna get off?" He knew it was the wrong thing to say because the little imp's small smile suddenly became absolutely lascivious. "Only if you want me to hot stuff." She ground her hips against his. "Care to make it worth my while?" Heat flooded his face, and he was certain he looked absolutely scarlet. "Cut the innuendo, he." She thumbed her nose. "You're too easy to tease." Naruto's mouth sealed shut. Oh, that soon proved a mistake. Rebecca didn't laugh at him. If she had, he would have bucked her off right then and there. No, it was the sharp interest in those red gold eyes of hers that stilled him. As if he were a cut of prime steak, one she was determined to devour come hell or high water. Nobody had ever looked at him like that before. He wasn't sure how felt about that. No, wait. He told a lie. He kinda liked it. "Well, be." The little devil leaned in, grinning ear to ear. "Thought somebody like you woulda had their cherry popped a while ago." She made a smacking noise with her lips. "Don't tell me you're a prude. Don't panic. That's what she wants." This from the short stack who won't let me up. Touché. She rolled off him with a laugh. "Aren't you just adorable?" So he scowled after her. "Where did everyone go?" The short girl waved a hand in feigned nonchalance as she plumped down on the sofa beside him. "Gloria's kid went and did something stupid. Probably installed the sandy poor Maine was after." She jerked a thumb over her shoulder toward the door. "They hauled butt and went after him. Took off on a right tier. Made me promise to babysit you." Naruto grimaced. He had some decent measure of what David felt like from that disaster back on the freeway. Shouldn't be too strong. Least he could do to thank Gloria for putting him up. Sons should listen to their mothers after all, and if David was out causing trouble for one reason or another, well, maybe it was high time someone talked to him. "I can find him." Rebecca leaned back. "What can you do? You're still bleeding all over Gloria's couch." Naruto touched a hand to his ribs. Kurama growled. "Jimmy minute." It didn't even take that. The moment he closed his eyes and marshaled his chakra, he felt the wound close. He didn't see it per se, but he heard a sharp sucking sound, felt a pleasant numbness rushing through his side and basked in Becca's subsequent gasp. It felt like her senses had been sharpened bitter somehow, pleasure in her and she surprise. Wasn't sure she liked it. Teach her to underestimate him. No, that didn't matter right now because you see, she remembered. Drawing a startled, ticklish laugh. Her mind remembered entirely what kind of too much of what she'd seen. Her brain I get one Naruto squinted at and her, and it hurt. Not quite comprehending. Such a strange thing. The hell having someone else's memories in her head. She scowled up at him. Let alone you messin' with me. She had seen them her eyes flashed from for a moment. First to literally the last. Flashed. Hells, Maine was right. She'd been in his head. The glow of her pupils same person after that she had observed people. You don't have any tech at all in you at all. Folks she wanted to hug. Pure enemies she felt sorry for and allies she would happily slap or something. And he'd been through it all. Grinned tugged at the corner of his mouth. If his memories were to be believed, growing used to Rebecca's blunt way of speaking, a freaking crude as it was. How did you top that answer you did for his mental state? At the end of it all, betrayal. But he digressed. His oldest, he had a kid to find had turned on him and blown a hole through his himself upright. That experience had marked him for better with a grimace. Fractured his legs, but he was not for a yet moment broken. Before he steadied even himself. After all his world had thrown him, he could already feel his strength coming back of it and survived. Hey, Becca grabbed at his sleeve to a certain strength of character. He pulled free if and only it ended her. There, but it didn't. Gonna track down did it to make matters worse? Be back in 5. Not just his past, both but his memories of this world as well. The world that he found himself. Night City's a big place. From the moment he met her and beyond, Naruto met her gaze. Rebecca
and
and
Sasha
glared right
that
back,
stung.
undaunted
Looking
by
back
his
to his
determination.
still sleeping face,
Sparks
she
flew
dared
between
to
them.
run a hand across
He
his
lifted
cheek.
his chin.
He was waking
Wanna
up,
bet why?
but slowly
She
she
opened
had
her
mere
mouth to
moments
protest,
act.
then closed it.
But what to
Smirked.
do? What to
All right,
do?
hot stuff.
What to do? She
You
hadn't
find him
the
in
faintest
5
clue
and
what
I'll
to
stop
do.
teasing you.
Let alone
I'll
what to
even
say. She
throw
knew
in
in
a
she had no
embrace.
one to blame
But
for
if you
this but
screw up,
herself.
she rubbed
Maybe
her
he
fingers
hadn't meant
together
to show
with a
her
lovely
that.
leer.
Maybe it was
You're
a
mine
mistake
for the
on his
week.
part.
But
Be
it
that
didn't
way,
chance
would
the
she too
facts.
could play this
She
game.
wasn't the only
That's
one
cute,
competing
but
for
I
his
didn't
heart.
ask
She'd
for an
suspected
embrace,
that,
known
runt.
it even,
An
but
ankle
to see Ito
smacked into his
realize
knee
that her
angrily.
hesitation had
I'm
caused
older
this,
than you are.
that if she just
Dumbass
said
Naruto
something
tilted
and a
his head.
familiar voice
Really,
crooned
yes,
in her
really,
ear,
implant
darkly
hurt like a
smug
beach.
in its satisfaction.
Of course it did.
What are you gonna
David
do about
knew
it?
it would.
Something she should
The
have done a
immense thing
long
was where
time
his
ago.
spine used to be.
Consequences and
No way
cowardice
it wouldn't
be
ache
damned.
like a mother.
The moment
He
Naruto
hadn't even
opened his
taken
eyes
any
and sat up,
painkillers at that.
Gloria
Did he
Martinez
feel
made her
guilty
move.
about it?
Yeah,
She made her
he
choice
did.
one a long
Mom
time
would
in
probably
coming.
chew his
Because
ear
at
off
the end
once
of
she
the day,
found out.
hesitation
Was it
is
worth it?
defeat.
Hell yeah. You're not
That
going to
punk
leave again.
Katsuo never
Are
saw
you
him
Naruto
coming.
yawned once?
He'd beat that
sat
blasted
up,
bully
opened
bloody.
his eyes, and
Talked
his
shit
mind
about his
fizzled
mother.
right out. Would he not
Gloria
having that?
must have stirred
Not
before
after she
him
almost
because she was
died.
sitting beside
Could
him.
be somebody now.
Had that been the
Support
end of
her
it,
the
he
way
might
she
have
had
recovered.
Mom
Rallied
would
even.
understand.
It was not.
Eventually, as he
He
looked
didn't
on
know
in
why
quiet
she'd held
disbelief,
onto this
David's
Sandivistan,
mother
but
shrugged
this
off
was
her
his
gown.
ticket.
He'd never seen such a
itched like
lovely
a beach,
sight, and
though.
let the garment
David
cool
bit
at her
his lip
feet
as he
as she
walked,
turned her gaze
biting
his
off
way.
the urge to
She
reach up
bared
and
her beauty
scratch.
to him.
It hurt
Bandages
something
and
awful,
all without a
but
hint
Doc
of
had been
fear,
insistent
then
that he
leaned
not touch
backward
it
and
for
for
at
him
least
just
a day.
so.
At
At this
this
angle,
angle,
he became aware of
something.
several things.
A
Her
swagger
buxom body
swept into
pressed
his
into his
step
lap,
as he
and her
sauntered down
hair
the street.
tickled his face.
He was special.
Her head shifted
He could
to the
protect
right
and support
just
Mom
enough
with
for him
this.
to glimpse
Sure,
an eye,
but there was
to
no
see
reason he
gaze
couldn't
rove
have
a little
upward
fun
and
with it.
meet
In the
his.
meantime,
When she
faint
finally
chime
spoke,
rose in his ear.
her voice was
He
little
picked
more
up
than a
without
whisper.
thinking. Her hand
Hello,
of feathers
mistakes
touch
were
on
made,
his chin,
and
as
the
she reached
subsequent
back to
shriek of
caress his
static
face.
had him wincing.
I'll give myself
David
to you if you
Martinez,
stay so. Please
sit,
don't go.
Sit, he grimaced.
Was that her concern?
Hey,
It seemed
Mom,
silly
how's
to
your
him,
day? You are
but from
so
her point of
grounded,
view,
young man.
it was probably
Crap
valid.
indeed.
For all her
A golden
bravado,
hand
he
landed
could
on
sense
his shoulder.
the anxiety coiling
Against
in
his
hers
better
like a
judgment,
serpent.
David
Doubt
looked
ready
up.
to sink its
Deity.
fangs deep. Naruto
Doubt
grinned
was
down
the
at
worst
him,
poison
eyed
in the
red
world,
and glowing
and he
gold.
knew if he walked
Remember
away
me,
now,
your mom's
hers
looking
would
for you.
absolutely
Don't
destroy
resist.
her.
Not
He
that he
did,
was
and
in
nope,
any
not
hurry
dealing
to
with
leave.
this.
The
Mind.
Sandivistan burned in
His
his
chin
back.
came down
In
on
an
her shoulder,
instant,
and he
blurred.
looped both
The
arms
blonde
around
tripped
her
him.
waist to control
His face
himself
smashed
as much
into
as
the
hold
floor.
her fast.
Pain
Who says
seared
I'm
through
going
his
anywhere?
nose.
I got hurt.
Me trick. She
Is
said
that
the
what these
words as though
implants
they
do?
you're
Damned
pretty
her
quick,
to
pretty quick.
oblivion.
No one should
I
have
was
been
afraid
able to
you'd
see
blame
him how he
yourself.
tried to blur
He might
away
have once
again. Only
now
to find
aged
himself
soft.
intercepted
Did you
by
think
a
I'd
second
run
yellow
because of that
flash.
to keep you safe?
Don't
She
tell me
bowed
you
her
have
head.
one of these
Just a
Sandys
touch.
too, nah. The
thought
thought
had
had
crossed
dusted
my
off
mind.
his
No.
ruined jacket. He shook his
Just
head.
built different.
I'm done running. Now,
You're
you
stuck
gonna
with
come
me.
with me?
Her
Her
hand
W.
fell
David
from his
took a
face.
deep breath and
Is that a
bolted.
promise? He lifted
Naruto
his chin a
streaked
little.
after him
It
with a
is.
sigh. Strong
She made a
way it is
pleased
they
noise
engaged
and
in something
pivoted
of
to
a
face
running
him
battle
fully in
from
turn,
each second
granting
another
him the
blur,
briefest
another
glimpse of her
intercept
bosom before she
forcing
laid
him
her
to
head
blur
against
again
his ear,
or risk
just
being
above
caught.
his heart.
David lost track
tired
of
of
how
running
many times
myself.
he used it. And what were you running from?
369,
Plenty of
he
things.
threw himself at every
She gave
angle
his
he
knee a
possibly
smack
could,
when he chuckled,
only to find himself
serious
boxed
most
in
like
myself.
some rank amateur.
Really, but her eyes
Which
he
met
knew
his
he might be.
half-lidded,
He'd
lips
never
parting
felt
just
like
so.
such a weakling
No
before.
more running.
It burned.
He had an inkling
Boiled
of what
in
was
his
coming
BLD
next,
like
and he was
nothing else.
neither dissatisfied
What the hell? He
nor
threw a
disappointed.
wild punch
Gloria
and found his
jumped
arm
him.
twisted
Her
behind his
mouth
back.
met his,
This
lips
fair
pressing
you are
against his
special,
own in
David.
a searing embrace.
Naruto
as she
swept
tackled
his
him
legs,
back to the bed,
caught him by
and
the
with
jacket,
it, the
and
last
smashed him
fraying
down to the
thread of
floor.
his self-control
But there's a
snapped.
difference between
Several
special
things
and
happened at
skilled.
once then.
Bright blue
His hands
eyes
came up to
beamed
cup
down at him
Gloria's
as he
waist
held
as he
him in
kissed her
place.
neck, and she
Now
liked
let's
that
go have a
very
word
much
with your
so
mom.
much that she
At grabbed a hold of his trousers and yanked. What's your deal, his boxers, old man? And she wasn't waiting anymore after that. But didn't let go of him. No siree. Old maybe 2 years older than him. There was a single moment of blinding, pleasurable white as their hips met. Then she grabbed him by the shoulders and dove in for another embrace. Ran down his nose. Wild, like a starving woman who'd gone without for far too long. His world went from there. He sat up. Is he laughing? He goes psycho or something? Deeper, reveling in the little gasp she gave. Which means it begins. Of it. Not that never Gloria enough gave him all the chance. The irresponsible she kissed him again before he could respond himself and hooked one long leg around his waist. Mom was then mad. The other as he lifted her, been a while since grinning now when his hand settled on her flank. An angry hand latched onto his ear. She retaliated by biting his lip and digging her fingernails into his back. Her eyes met his as they broke for air. And for a second, hot when she's angry. Sworn they maybe that's what Blondie sees. Don't you dare David stop! Absolutely, he noticed something else. Dude, not cool. You're that's glowing my mom again. Gloria rounded as she drew back, glancing at herself. Her Mr. the big guy held up his hands. I didn't say nothing. Her body was shimmering, could hear them shouting. Shade of golden
Must have been real loud.
It was
if
glorious.
He could catch their words from
then
the
her
rooftop.
lips met his,
the ghost
and her hips began to move his face as he looked down.
Distracted by
Faded
far
now
more pleasant
as he
things.
looked out on the
Becca
cityscape
peeked
below.
through the crack in the door
Flying
and
cars,
clapped slowly,
definitely not
softly,
in the elemental
silently.
nations anymore. Culture shock
you
was one hell of a
sneaky
thing.
being.
Sasha pushed
He'd
a
not
finger
had
to
time
her
for
lip
it
before.
Busy as
down,
he
I
was
want to
first,
watch.
he'd been focused
Both
on
girls
healing Gloria,
titled their heads
then
as they
finding
watched
David
the scene
and
dragging the boy back
tilted
by
them
his
more
belt
now.
when he passed out.
He's flexible,
But now that he'd
well-fit,
sorted that,
to
now that
Japan
things had
roiled
more
with
or less
rumors.
calmed down, a
Tales
lonely
of a golden
breeze ran
beast
through his
and
hair,
its displeasure
using
with
his
the
Arasaka
bangs.
name. There was
As
just
such
so
the
much
company
to
was
see.
currently
He
embroiled
was afraid
in a
to
great
even use
deal
sage
of
mode
conflict.
again for fear
Hanako
of what
didn't
he
know
might
what to
find
do,
determined
and
negative
so she
emotion
turned to
sensing.
desperate measures.
He'd already tried it
She
and
called
nearly
her brother.
gone mad. Target
This
acquired.
so-called city was a
Arasaka
hotbed
had
of
been
anger
very
and
clear.
discontent,
Gloria
and pain
Martinez could
calm
not
down.
be allowed to
I
live.
am calm.
A message
He switched
must
to
be
sixth
sent.
sense
He could
off
see
with
her
a sigh.
through the scope now.
Just a bit shocked.
All it would take
He
was
could
a
still
twitch of the
feel it
trigger
all,
and
those
negativity
sweet,
bubbling
sweet
beneath
eddies
the
would be
surface,
all his.
but muted.
Pull the trigger,
Ever
a
present,
face,
a ringing
filled
in
the
his
scope.
ears.
The sniper took the
It wasn't
shot on
something he
reflex.
could simply
As such,
ignore.
he had a perfect view of
Sirens
watching the
wailed
sniper
somewhere
round
in the distance,
and he
against
resisted the
Naruto
urge to
Uzumaki's
leap
forehead.
down into the fray.
It would haunt him for the
Something
rest of
told
his
him
days.
once he started,
what
he
was
wouldn't
left
be
of
able
them.
to stop.
He reeled
What
back,
now he'd
brandishing
landed here
his
solely
rifle
by
like a
accident.
club. How
Coasting
did you
from
not
one
foolish
mess to
enough
another
to lower
without
my
a
guard
care
in
in
a
the
place
world?
like this?
If he
You
didn't
know.
have a purpose,
The blonde
a goal,
crouched
he
down
sat
and
with a
retrieved
sigh.
them.
Why might
Flattened
even
round,
hear a door
humming
open.
softly.
Thought
That's
that's
why
why
I
I
had
had
the
the surroundings seeded with shadow
behind
clones.
him.
The
He
heck
craned
was
his
that
neck
shadow
back.
wobbler?
Miss Gloria, none of that.
Filled his mouth
She waved
and
a hand
shattered his
and
teeth,
paused,
sending
standing
him reeling
beside
to the
him.
floor.
You're making
You
me
think you're
feel
hot
old.
stuff, don't you?
Gloria
How's this
didn't
for
look
an answer?
old.
5%.
Tired, yes, but
He
not
held
old.
up a hand.
If anything,
fingers
she looked
splayed.
DMN
That's
healthy.
all I need to
There
deal
was
with
almost
someone like
pleasant
you.
glow to
You
her
people are
skin,
soft,
now a sharpness
squishy,
in her eyes that hadn't
crouching
been
down.
there before.
He took a hold of
her
the
found
sniper's
himself
arm and
wondering
bent it
if
back,
he imagined it.
ignoring the
The
scream
faint
that
scent of
followed.
shampoo reached
It's
his
almost
nose,
sad, really.
and belatedly
His victim
he
noticed
wailed.
the towel
What do you
slung
want?
round
Answers
her
would be
shoulders.
nice.
Realized
gulped.
her hair was
And
down
if I don't
long
give
and
them
wet.
a mighty
Not a
golden
bad
shadow
look for her.
fell over him.
She stared at him for a
The
long
sniper
moment,
sang like a
eyes
canary,
flashing.
and by the end,
Becca was right.
he died like
You
one.
really don't have any
A door
tech in
flew
or on
free
you.
from its
I
hinges
don't know
in
if
a
that's
shower
brave
of spark.
or just suicidal.
Naruto lowered
he snorted,
his boot,
leaned
that why
forward,
you came up here to
and
tease me
grinned
now.
into the now
She
open
elbowed
archway.
him.
Wanted
Hello,
to thank you
is this
and thought you might
Arasaka
need to
I'd
talk.
like to make a withdrawal?
Blunt? Was
The
she
result
hell of a
was
thing.
everything
Ain't it
HD
words
hoped it
rushed
would
out
be.
before he could think to
Bullets
hold them
spattered
back.
harmlessly
I
off
can
his
run
chakra
faster
cloak,
than light,
flattened
punch
against
buildings
his
down,
sea and face,
blow a hole
tickling
in the
him.
moon. Gloria
Nice
blinked
guns
quickly.
blew at his
What?
face,
But I just
split
can't
in a
seem to
toothy
wrap my
grin
head
as he
around this
conjured
place.
a pair of raisin
He flung
shuriken
out a
out of
hand.
thin air.
How do you people
One
live
to
out
each
here?
hand.
We adapt.
Mine are
She
bigger
shrugged
than yours.
one shoulder. He
Don't
swung
worry.
both hands
A bit of
forward,
chrome
and the
and you'll be
screams
right
began
as
as he
rain.
waded in.
A strange
was
feeling
overkill
nestled
in
in
his
his
gut.
gut like this.
He turned away,
Wouldn't do to
watching
bring
the
the
building
skyline.
down on his head
I'm
like the
fine the
last
way I
one.
am.
You know,
If you
so
say
yes.
so.
That
She
must
limited
have
him a
seen the
little,
look in his eyes
but only a
because
little.
she didn't pry.
He casually
Instead,
caved
she
the guard's
sat and
skull in,
swung one
humming
leg
under
over
his
the
breath.
edge,
Tucked the other into her
guy.
settee,
Then
one.
laid her chin
Not
on
so
her
that
remaining
scientist
knee.
over there.
Her
He
eyes
shooed
sought
them
his
away
once
with a
more.
gust of wind
What will
and
you
sent
do
the
now?
poor
That was the
fellow
question.
scurrying for the
Wasn't
exit.
it to know? The next
She
two
twirled
he
his
killed
strand
without
of wet hair
passing
around her
glance.
finger.
The people
Do
in
you have
here were
anywhere
something
to
of a
stay?
mixed
He had an
bag to his
inkling of
senses.
where this
Most
was
were
going.
scum,
No, but not all.
Then it's settled.
He
You
was
can stay
careful
with
to
us.
pick his targets.
He grimaced
the
a
innocent
little.
lived and the
She saw
guilty.
it. Those
I'm
whose
sorry
hearts
about
were
D.
blacker than their
David's
own
a good
souls.
kid.
Well, she
Three
grimaced
guesses
a little.
as to what happened
He tries
to them.
to be.
First
He's
two
got a
don't
good
count.
heart. He cornered a
Naruto's
clerk
grimace
against the
became a
wall with
grin.
a smile.
That why you were hollering
Where
at
do
him
you
down
keep
there?
the
A
important
flash
stuff
of pink
in
hit
his
her
cheeks?
cheeks. The man trembled.
Heard that? Did
He
you?
blew
It's fine.
out a frustrated
I don't
sigh.
hold a grudge.
Look,
She
buddy,
heaved a sigh.
you're just a pencil
That's good
pusher.
to
I don't
hear.
want to hurt you.
He turned to
But you're
face
gonna
her
tell me
fully.
one way
I'm
or
sensing
another.
a question
So
here.
what would be
Gloria
the top
ran a
floor?
hand through her
Server
damp
room.
hair.
He
You'll
wants
need
to
an
drop out
engram
of
to get in
school and
great.
run
He
with a
clapped
friend
him
of
on the
mine.
back.
Any
Thanks
chance
for
you can
being
talk him
such a
out
good
of it
sport
me
about
I've
this.
already tried.
You can go home
She
now.
looked away.
Just one last
He won't
thing.
listen.
He
I want a
craned
better
his
life
gaze
for
up
him.
to regard the
He
floors
deserves
above.
more than a
What's on the top
hand
floor?
gestured
He looked
helplessly
back to
to
find
the fellow
glimmering
in a
city
dead
below.
faint.
He'd find it himself.
Finger curled
Did he
into
feel
a fist,
bad about dispatching
nails
all
biting
these
down
people
into
made
her
a little?
palm?
But
The
he couldn't
things
let
I've done to get him
Arasaka
here,
get away
the
with what they've
sacrifices
done.
I've made, I
So in
can't
other
let
words,
it go to waste.
He has so
All the
much
booms.
potential. The chance to be the very best can drag himself out of this cesspool if he just applies himself. You really care about him, don't you? She puffed out her CC. I raised that boy. Of course I care. As she should. A mother couldn't be anything less. You're a good mom, Gloria. He's lucky to have ya. Her ears burned. He noticed. Nevertheless, her words reached him. I don't think I can convince David, but I'll give it a try. Gloria's face lit up. That's all I ask. What am I, your personal valet or something? Silence stretched between them, broken only by the wind whistling across the rooftops.
In the absence of words, he made his decision. I want to learn about this place. He raised his gaze, watching a rocket streak its way toward the moon. Why the way it is? Maybe I can fix it. If he needed a goal, that seemed a good one as any. He'd never sensed a such wretched hive of scum and villainy. Just thinking about made him twitch. There was good here, he'd seen it firsthand, but all the mayhem and madness threatened to drown it out completely. He couldn't stand it. The more he dwelt on it, the more certain he became. Kurama agreed, evidently. Bold of you, I'll give you that. Oh, Gloria huffed. Clean up Night City, that's an ambitious goal. You don't do anything by halves. Do you? It certainly was ambitious, but when had he balked at that before? I'll still try. It won't be enough, she warned him. It never is. He firmed his jaw, refusing to yield. Stubborn boy. The single mother hung her head. If you really want to change this city, I won't stop you. I owe you that much, but you don't know what you're getting involved with. Her eyes met his once again. That's hell you're walking into. Most of the folks here won't thank you for it. You don't know what it's like. It was knowledge he was lacking. Understandable. He knew next to nothing about this world. Then tell me. Gloria blinked, taken aback by his forthrightness. You sure it'll take a while? He shrugged. I've got nothing but time. Fine. Make yourself comfortable. Naruto stood and made to do just that. The world went sideways. He blinked, alarmed to find himself sprawled flat, his back once more, the world spinning. Dizzy. Gloria laughed a little. It was a rare, tired sound. Guess you're not fully recovered after all. She took hold of his head and, before he could think to stop here, steered him into her lap. Heat speared through his cheeks as he found himself looking up at her, past the swell of her breasts, into dark eyes, half-lidded with intent. Try as he might, he couldn't quite read her intent. His throat went dry. And then she smiled. Comfortable, he sputtered. Why were you? Hush. She booped his nose with one finger. I owe you this much, at least. If something like this settles even a tenth of my debt to you, I'll be satisfied. Her brow furrowed a little. You're warm. You running a fever or something? Did your wound open again? Naruto sputtered a little. Apparently she liked to cuddle. Was this a thing people did in this world? She leaned down and touched her forehead to his. His brain fizzled. Doesn't feel like you do. A fresh surge of heat hit him. He couldn't say he wasn't comfy. He'd never experienced the legendary lap pillow before. Never thought to real. Felt kinda nice, all things considered. Gloria's lap was just the right blend of softness and firmness. No fat on her. This was a woman who was on her feet most of the day, and it showed. All right. She raised a finger. You want to know about this city? He dared a nod. Get ready for a lecture. First we have the corporations, and so she told him. She told him it all nearly an hour later, when his brain was nearly full to bursting. Gloria finally gripped her arm and paused. That's enough of a refresher course for now. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Come with me. He couldn't help but notice she phrased the last bit in the form of a question, almost as if she were afraid he'd refuse. I promise, he's a friend. I'd stay to introduce you, but well. She granted him a rueful grimace. Work calls. Have to keep the lights on somehow. Alright. Twist my arm, why don't you? Naruto sat up slowly, bracing himself for another dizzy spell or worse. None came. Gloria clapped him on the back, opened the rooftop door, and descended. He followed her down with a frown. Something nagged at him. He'd noticed it when she gripped her arm. For a moment, an instant, strange. For a moment there he could have sworn he felt chakra from her. Impossible. Utterly impossible. Must be more tired than I thought. Big. Such was Naruto's first impression of Maine. Guy was built like a fortress, no saying that was a disservice to him. Man was a mountain. He absolutely loomed over him in Gloria's apartment. His very presence seemed to make him larger than life. No other words would do. So you're the one that helped Gloria out. The giant lifted his sunglasses, sizing him up. Brought the sandy back in one piece, too, even if it's attached to her kid. David grumbled something to that effect where he lay sprawled on the couch. Maine ignored him. Thanks, kid, I owe you one. He offered him his hand. Naruto grasped it, drawing a laugh from him. Hell of a grip you got there. Sharp eyes FLK'd him up and down, considering. You sure you don't got any chrome on ya? Nothing under the hood. For some reason, that irked Naruto even more. You have no idea.
Nope, he said instead. Must be built different. David squawked. That's my line, old man. Oi, he winged a shoe at his feet. You lost your right to that line when ripped out your own spine and scared your mother half to death. David subsided with a scowl. Maybe he'd been a bit too harsh there. But still chrome, and more chrome. All this talk of implants was making him feel ill. Why did these people feel the need to mutilate themselves simply to become stronger? Couldn't they train like normal people are? Are you actually angry? He was. Come to think of it, that came as something of a surprise. Really, he didn't hold it against anyone, and certainly not Maine, but all this nigh on constant insistence that he do the same had done more than grate on his nerves. They were completely worn down. Even poor David's actions baffled him to no end. Why tear out your spine just to move a little faster? A few push-ups, sit-ups, followed by plenty of juice and a few hundred laps around the city would have even the weakest civilian moving like Rockley. By contrast, all these implants felt like what was the word? A shortcut. Aha, that was it. This is their world, Naruto. Kurama reminded him, ever the voice of reason. Not ours. You can't fault them for finding a way to survive. No point in getting angry about it. Must be a cultural thing. It still didn't sit well with him. But Maine was speaking again, and he must attend. He'd ignored the big guy long enough. You've got a spark, I'll give you that. Becca seems keen on ya, if nothing else. BLD rushed to his face once more. That girl again. He'd won their bet. She'd kept her word not to call him kid anymore, but he doubted he'd seen the last of her. Crazy Munchkin seemed to get off on teasing him. No way she was done with him. Anyway, you're welcome to lend a hand if you want. Maine clapped him on the back. Gloria needs the eddies. I'll give you a fair cut. What about the kid? David flipped them off and rolled over, favoring his still healing back. Maine shrugged. He'll cool off eventually. Might have him work a few jobs with Lucy to make up for the Sandy. Gloria had begged him to keep David safe. Nothing dangerous, nah. Maine waved him off. Wouldn't risk him like that. An ugly thought hit him. He in debt to you guys now, may as well be. That Sandevistan was gonna be mine. He had an idea. An awful idea, but a bad plan was better than no plan at all. I'll pay off his debt. Maine leaned back, considering him. You sure about that? That's a lot of cash. He stepped to him, matching his stare. I can carry my weight. Don't doubt that from what I heard. Can you kill? Naruto stiffened. You strike me as one of those noble types. Maine said. Pure. They never last long in this city. Naruto pride took the hit with good grace. He wasn't so arrogant as to let a little knock like that rattle him. What did you have in mind? How fast are you? Really? A grin split his face. Wanna find out? Ha! The giant belted out a laugh, startling him. All right, rookie. You've caught my attention. I'll be in touch. His piece said. The massive man ducked back toward the door. We've got a gig a few days from now. We'll see if you're the real deal then. Keep an eye on the runt in the meantime. Yeah, be ashamed to lose him again after all that trouble. Yeah, don't gotta tell Metwis. Naruto turned to find David rising from the couch. The boy was glaring at him. Hey, old man. Want a word with you? Hey, old man. Want a word with you? David almost didn't live to regret those words. Something sparked in Naruto's tired blue eyes when he said them. It almost looked like anger. Frustration roared high in him before he stomped it back down. Almost made him hesitate. That did. Almost. He'd never been one to hesitate before, and he didn't do so now. What do you want? He drawled. And don't call me old man. Want a word with ya? Naruto waved him on. We're alone. David shook his head and planted both hands in his pockets. Not here. Why the hell not? David shrugged one shoulder, not willing to admit the truth. He didn't want to make a mess here. Best to do this someplace else. A blonde brow rose. You do realize you're still grounded, right? Old man just didn't get it. They had a score to settle. Won't be long. We'll be in and out before Mom gets back. She won't even know we're gone. Naruto's brow furrowed. Out of where? Just come with me. Already fine. Lead the way. He shouldered past him. A long, agonizing walk followed. David did his best not to glance back during it. He led him to an abandoned district, an old worn-out street, an avenue no one used anymore. Hollow buildings and dilapidated stores marked their way, dimly lit by FL curing lights. Closer to gang territory than he would have liked, but it served his purpose. We almost there, or what almost? He peeled back a wire fence. This way.
Together they stepped through. Steel girders and concrete pillars awaited them in an open lot within, the remnants of what had once been well, he didn't know what was. Someone had tried to build something here once, and given up halfway. Whoever the poor chum was, he was long gone. Night City ate dreams for breakfast. Same went for lives. What's this supposed to be, an abandoned site or something or something? He paused. Pivoted to face him. How strong are you? He didn't take the bait. Strong enough. No, that's not it. You're faster than me. How sit? He was screwing this up. I'm asking how you got so damn strong, what you can do. Damn it, let me show you. Naruto held up a lone hand. David squinted at it, baffled. The hell were you doing? The blonde grinned. Wait for it. Wait for Wayat. His words peaked into a yelp as a shrieking sphere burst into existence, one he launched at a nearby concrete pillar. It didn't break. Wind howled as it crumbled to pieces, and then the ground beneath it, leaving a gaping crater behind in its wake. Naruto walked over to the remains and stomped down, cratering them further still. Satisfied, David leaned over the hole with a low whistle. How'd you do that? Determination, commitment, and sheer willpower. The blonde FL gave him a thumbs up. It's not about how much strength you have, David. It's what you use it for. You thrashed that punk for taking down your mom. That much I can understand. Gotta protect your family, you know. He scowled at him. What would you know? Naruto only smiled. At least you have a mother. The words hit him like a gut punch. Your mom's gone, yup. I'm probably the last of my kind. He gave a shrug. I try not to let it bother me. How dad was a piece of shit he didn't even remember, but if mom was gone he didn't know what he would do. How'd you even survive? I made friends. He shrugged quickly to hide the flash of pain in his eyes. Most of them are probably gone now. What I'm saying at this. It's your life, David. Do what you want with it. Just make it a life worth living. Don't regret any of it. Not for a single second. No. This was all going terribly, horribly. He hadn't brought him here to make him all weepy and sit. He dragged him out here with the intent of giving him a piece of his mind, or barring that, kicking his butt to kingdom come. Neither seemed possible now, not after a display like that. In desperation, he threw out the first thing he could to break the tension. Something sprang to his mind. He pounced on it. Says the guy banging my mom. Result achieved. Naruto sputtered. I ain't what? He quirked a brow. So she's not good enough for ya? You're egging me on. He grinned, unable to help himself. Maybe. Naruto's brow twitched. You have 3 seconds to start running. A hot rush of air cut through his thoughts, obliterating anything else he might have said. A vessel descended from above, bathing them in ruddy red light. David flung up an arm to shield his face from it, squinting into the glare. The Hell men in heavy tactical armor disembarked, rappelling down from the craft to surround them. It all happened in an instant. 3, 6, 9. He counted them all in a daze, still not quite comprehending what was happening here. By the time he did, it was much too late. Rifles it, and he found himself raising his arms despite himself, self-preservation briefly winning out over the anger and confusion. The large of them barked a command. Freeze, hey, wait. David flailed backward. We didn't do nothing. David Martinez. Their commander intoned. You will come with us. Go with an Arasaka hit squad. He'd never see the light of day again. He said as much. Hell no. A bullet ricocheted an inch from his shoe. The next one won't miss. He stiffened, transfixed by countless laser sights. Don't even think about using that Sandevistan. One twitch and we'll blow your brains out, sir. Another soldier gestured toward Naruto, startling him. The blonde. That's the one on the cameras. The one he wants. It's our lucky day. Their commander grunted into his mask. The circle closed around them. Someone pulled out cuffs. Sit. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Naruto took note of their armor. Arasaka, Gloria mentioned you guys. He blew out a sigh. Don't suppose we can talk this out? A round slammed into his shoulder, sending him stumbling back. David swore. But there was no BLD. Wisps of golden light coated Naruto's tea like a vest, blocking the bullet. He picked it out of the faux wound, pinched it between his fingers. Scaldna made a FL King motion with his finger. A horrible noise filled the air. Almost sounded like a gunshot. The shooter toppled to the floor, bearing a fist-sized hole in what passed for his Cries of terror went up. Naruto laughed at them. Why the hell is he laughing? One of the soldiers cried. He goes psycho or something. No. The blonde shook his head. It's never enough. I see enough. Which means he swayed aside, evading another burst of gunfire, still wearing that eerie, blank expression. Can't kill, huh? Naruto blew out a sigh, breath misting in the low light. That tears it. I'm in a foul mood. Here's a counter-offer. He held up a hand, and in the gloom, David could have sworn it started to glow. Buzz off though that, you'll live to see another day. Stick around and I let my friend out to play. Stupid chums didn't listen. Corpus never do. On your knees. Naruto craned his neck. His eyes narrowed. He seemed to shift in that instant, standing a little taller. You first. A blink and the man's head burst like an overripe melon, spattering them in scarlet. His body crashed to the floor. David recoiled, gorge rising. What the hell? Giving me control? Naruto gazed at a clawed hand. You've really had enough today, haven't you? Bullets pinged harmlessly of his CST. Surrender. One of soldiers bleated. You're surrounded. Naruto raised his head. All I am surrounded by is fear and dead men. A golden arm waved. 2 more soldiers splattered the ground, sacks of so much dead meat. Watch closely now, David. He looked over his shoulder, heedless of the carnage. I want you to remember this moment. Let me show you just how powerful I really am. Then he lunged at them. That's life. No, if this is what you call a city, then the city needs to change. Big talk, kid. But can you back it up? Just watch me. Down and dirty. It was a massacre. No other word for it, David mused. Naruto tore right through the Maxtac squad. There was no finesse to the fight that followed, not style, no grace. He was in their face. BLD spattered all over the place. All the while he stood by, horrified, unable to do anything but watch the slaughter. Armor parted like paper and flesh with it. He was a golden wraith among them, never pausing for even an instant. Bullets bounced off hardened golden skin only to be caught and flung back, ripping apart their owners. Bodies hit the floor, sundered beneath cruel claws, light and shadow. And the laughter. Felt the laughter. Reinforcements didn't mean jack shit, not when he was laughing like that. He said something about switching with someone called Kurama earlier. Was this him? If so, he didn't want to F him with. Demon Chum was crazy. What's wrong? Wild red eyes rounded on the survivors. Is this the best you have to offer? Someone unloaded a shotgun into his still glowing face. Naruto barked a laugh and spat the buckshot back to annihilate the shooter's head. The man's ruined body teetered in place before a crushing kick caught his iti and launched him into his fellows, sending them sprawling to the floor. Grenade pins clattered to the floor in his wake. Kurama spun one such ring round a golden finger. Missing these, the corpse detonated, taking 3 more men with him in a hail of shrapnel and napalm. One of the survivors screamed. Said scream died in a gurgle as clawed fingers kissed their throat. See, a lazy backhand broke their neck and put them out their misery. That said, I am profoundly unimpressed. Naruto reached into his mouth and picked out a stray shell. Is this really what passes for jutsu in this day and age? Small wonder Naruto didn't want to deal with you. All right. He tilted his head. Which one of you wants next? A hand clamped down on David's shoulder. Freeze, you freak, don't move, I've got a hostage. Kurama sighed. No you don't. On that, they agreed. David let his Sandevistan flare and felt the world slow around him. It was always a bit trippy, watching everything wind down to a crawl. Everyone save Naruto, at any rate. No time to dwell on that. He jammed an elbow backward. His rewarded was a grunt of pain followed by an awful crunch. His would-be captor crumpled like a house of cards. Just as well he did too, because Naruto had just decapitated the last of them, and now he was turning towards him. Hey, he waved his way frantically. Slow down over there, I've got a prisoner. The bloodied blonde rounded on him. Those red eyes dimmed. He swayed on his feet, echo gone from his voice. A hand patted David's bloody mohawk. Good boy. They came home covered in BLD. Gloria knew it wasn't paint. Paint didn't look like that, and it certainly smelled like that. Their chagrined expressions didn't do wonders for their confidence, either. Maine didn't help matters any. The big guy took one look at them, tipped his shades down and whistled like a proud parent. She would have smacked him if he were in arm's reach. He knew better and stayed well out of her grasp to evade her wrath. Cheeky prat,
always coming by when she least expected it. She'd have to tell Dorio about this. Maybe have her knock him around the ring a little. David Martinez, alas, that left her planting both fists on her hips and glaring bloody red daggers at her son. Explain yourself, young man. Her boy, her sweet, baffling boy, grimaced a little. I can explain, Gloria growled. Can you? Now her son winced. Actually I can't. But he can. Me, Naruto squawked, alarmed to find the finger pointed his way. Oi, how on earth is this my fault? You're the one who took a witness, yeah, but you agreed belatedly. She noticed the groaning MaxTac soldier being dragged behind them. One of them must have had the wherewithal to throw a sack over his head because the poor BU was likewise bound and gagged. Someone had even stuffed crags into his ears. No chance of him finding out where he was or, more importantly, who they were. Figured we might have some questions. Naruto shrugged, dragging her back to reality once more. But this guy won't talk. We can fix that. Maine buelled their way. I'll give Kiwi a call. Maybe Sasha or Lucy in a pinch. David perked up. Lucy. Gloria nearly throttled him on the spot. Of course he'd focus on that part. Naruto elbowed him as the larger man reached down, slung their hostage over his shoulder. Down, loverboy. You can make kissy faces at her later, says the guy eyeing Gak. He grunted. A Naruto's elbow sheathed itself in his gut, doubling him over. That's going to be your go-to insult with me, ain't it? David grinned around his hand until Maine snatched him up as well. Hey, come on, kid. Let's give these two a minute, Gloria growled. I need a word with you. The door closed behind them with an ominous CLCK. Naruto paced inside and flung himself down onto the couch, counting the seconds. 3, 6, And yet despite his trepidation, Gloria didn't explode. She didn't rant or rage or even try to hit him. That alone won her more points than Sakura ever had. But she wasn't happy with him either. He knew that look. He'd seen it in Tsunade's eyes a time or two. Yet when she finally spoke, her voice was eerily calm. What went wrong, Wooho? Everything. He palmed his face with a sigh. David wanted to talk somewhere private. We got ambushed. Simple as that. I gathered that much. She pinched the bridge of her nose and stifled a sigh of her own. Do you realize what you've done? Do you even know who attacked you? He tilted his head. Should I MaxTac here at last? She raised her voice. They go after cyberpsychos. Someone sent them after you and David. Strange terminology there. I don't feel psycho. If anything, he felt downright light after letting Kurama out to slaughter those goons. Not that he'd ever tell anyone. I should hope not. Gloria sank down into the seat opposite him, distracting him once more. Putting aside the fact that you don't have a single piece of hardware in or on you. But it doesn't change the facts. Look at this. She held up her wrist and a bit of light flashed forth from it, coalescing into an image. His face stared back at him, and beneath it, oh, that was a thing. See what I mean? That's a pretty big bounty. Bigger than he liked. And they wanted him alive. Why I didn't do anything. Naruto, what? He glowered back at her. I didn't. Realization dawned. You're angry. I'm not angry. Gloria leaned away, temper faltering under his stoic stare. I'm livid. But not at you. You need some space. Was this her way of kicking him out? He couldn't begrudge her that. He couldn't deny that he'd brought down his fair share of heat on her. No idea why these people were after him, but he couldn't deny the chance that his being near her might put her in danger. Maybe he ought to find a different place to crash for a while. All right. He climbed to his feet. Don't gotta tell me twice. Imagine his surprise then, when Gloria balked. You're agreeing so easily. Well, I'm indebted to you for helping me out. He scratched the back of his head with a rueful smile. Don't want to see you and David get hurt. You should be more worried for yourself. She snatched at his sleeve. This is a massive bounty. He wasn't worried. They'd never be able to collect. Seen higher. Listen to me. Gloria knew he wouldn't. The moment she said the words, knew it deep in her gut. Brave boy. Fearless boy. Foolish boy. He thought himself invincible. And maybe he was compared to the people here. Anyone who could tank gunfire and laugh about it wasn't someone she wanted to cross. There was a small part of her that understood that, and another that feared him. The rest of her wanted to shake him silly. Did he not understand the danger I am? His face fell. And I know what you trying to say. I can't stay here anymore. Can I? Oh gods. Now it felt like she'd kicked a helpless puppy. You just can't go out for a while. He shook his head with a pained noise. It hurt her heart. We both know that ain't gonna work. I don't want to put you and David in any more danger than I already have. She knew his reason, respected it, even. So why did this hurt so much? Will you be safe? Everyone will be howling for your head. You won't be able to set a foot outside actually, yes. His smile startled her. I can. What makes you think? She was still speaking when he snapped his fingers. A plume of smoke surrounded him. When it faded, she found herself looking at herself. Gloria near choked on her spit. The hell? See, her doppelganger laughed with her voice, flashed her a saucy wink, and performed a merry little twirl in place, all the while smiling in a wild way she never would. Told you. I'll be just fine. How can you turn into me, not just you? Her mirror image winked at her. But with a FLCK of his fingers and another plume of smoke, she found herself staring at Maine, then Rebecca. I can be anyone I want to be. Can't find me when I'm pulling this now, can they? A frown. Don't like being this short. Let's try something else. A shroud of smoke and he was back to normal, as though nothing had happened at all. Gloria blinked. She blinked strong. How just an old ninja trick. His smile was decidedly unabashed. Got a few more, but they're not the subtle sort. Her right arm began to itch again. Gloria gripped her wrist to quell it. She wanted to tell him about it, but it just didn't feel like the right time. Still, I need a proper disguise, and I don't want to drag any of you into this, so I've got one. He vanished in a plume of smoke before her eyes, replaced by a rather simple-looking man with silver hair and dark eyes. At least she assumed he was, given his lower face was hidden behind a mask. This'll do for now. He thumbed his hidden chin with a nod. He seemed almost nostalgic to be wearing such an ordinary face. I'm sure Sensei wouldn't mind me walking around like this. Her world was spinning. It was all too much to take in. Sensei, it means teacher. He waved a hand her way. Don't worry about it. An ugly feeling bloomed beneath her bosom. It felt like fear. She was experiencing it an awful lot these days. I'm not worried about that. She grabbed at his sleeve. I'm worried about you. Don't you know what this means? I do. He dispelled the disguise and pried her fingers away with his own. She had to fight down a flush when he didn't let go of her hand, but rather raised it between the two of them, squeezing her palm tight. I've never had a price on my head before, but I've known people who have. It's just a matter of finding the guy who put it out and taking him out. When you say take him out, he only smiled. She envied him his confidence. Among other things, down girl, she rebuked herself sternly for the slip, stomping that thought into oblivion. You barely know him. But didn't she know enough for now? He was brave and selfless, but beyond that, willing to look after David. A rare enough combination here in Night City, yet the look in his eyes stirred something in her all over again. He was everything David's father wasn't and would never be. He's someone who won't stay. A treacherous little voice whispered in the back of her mind. If you gave him reason to. What's the harm? Gloria shushed it. She rubbed her thighs together, hips twisting from side to side. How long had it been? Too long. It wouldn't be anything serious. Just a tumble. Gloria, as she shook her head quickly to center herself. I'm sorry, what did you say? I'm thinking about staying with Maine for a bit. His boyish grin had her heart skipping all over again. He made me an offer earlier about a job. She fought down a flinch. That's nice. You can trust him not to stab you in the back, if nothing else. Naruto frowned. You kinda look like you want to say something. Gloria dearly did. She held her tongue. Nothing at all. Welcome aboard, kid. So you're gonna be hanging with us for a bit? Naruto heaved a sigh. Be calm. This was for the best. Calling this apartment rundown didn't even begin to describe it, but it would serve in the interim. He wasn't sure if Maine didn't trust him enough to bring him to his place yet, or if he was just trying to vet him before he introduced him to the rest of the crew. At least this sofa didn't have roaches, unlike the last one. Not quite the word I'd use, but sure. He rolled his shoulders in a spry shrug. And I ain't a kid. Maine clapped him on the back. After that massacre, I don't doubt it. A familiar weight settled against his shoulders. Neither do I. Kurama sighed. And there she is. Naruto hid a rueful smile. Hey Becca. Long time no see. He didn't miss the way she cozied up to him. Feels like forever since we saw each other. A blonde brow arched. It's only been a few days. Semantics. Maine sighed. Rebecca off his back. We're trying to talk here. Nope, she snuggled closer. Hey, you didn't shack up with Red while I was away, did he? Red? Did she mean Gloria? Might as well answer. No, great. He could feel her breath warming his ear. Asking for a friend. Forward, little imp, this one flirting aside. Maine snatched a sullen Becca up and off him with a grunt, capturing his attention once more. The point I'm making is this. You ain't afraid to get your hands dirty. Why avoid it? They were already steeped in BLD, he clearly couldn't talk his way out of every fight down here. Next time, and he just knew there would be a next time, he wouldn't hide behind Kurama. He'd gladly get his hands dirty if it meant Gloria and David could live a decent life. No, he said at last. I'm not afraid of that. Oh, Becca's wriggled free and plunked down beside him. So you're not green after all then? That's good. Means we won't have to babysit ya, at least. Not in the least. He'd probably seen thrice the amount of combat she had. You have no idea. He knew he'd chosen well when the big bruiser boomed a belly laugh. That's more like it. Remember that job we talked about earlier? I do. His head bobbed in a glum nod, recalling their prior conversation before he'd run off with David. You asked how fast I was. Demonstrate I did. Maine slung a beefy arm around his shoulders. How do you feel about giving Arasaka a bloody nose? He perked up, eyes flashing. How bloody? Maine's grin matched his own. Now that's what I like to hear. Speaking of BLD, an ingenious idea occurred to him. He just thought of a brilliant way to get back at Arasaka. Hey, mind if I borrow Becca for a bit? First said girl blinked. Me what for? Hey, she squeaked as he rounded on her, all but pulling her into his lap, alarmed by his sudden forwardness. Wait a second, I'm not ready, I haven't prepared my heart. Naruto leaned closer, all but pressing his forehead to hers, heedless of her babbling. You any good with a? He whispered the rest into her ear. Her eyes widened, brain fizzled for a moment, then rebooted. Then she grinned. It was a savage smile. Wait, you thinkin' what I think you're thinking? You. He smacked his lips with an audible pop. That does it. I'm keepin' you two gonna let me in on the secret here, or what? Naruto hummed. You'll see. So can we head out for a bit? Or Maine grinned. Sure thing, I don't mind. Just don't go knocking. Becca up two fists, one large, the other small, absolutely dented the back of Maine's head. Alright, I'll bite. What's the plan? Funny you should ask. First, we'll need bang bang past the paint, Becca. Rebecca did just that and happily handed Naruto an overlarge bucket brimming with orange liquid. A black-gloved palm grasped its handle. It was the last bucket of many. Bright blue eyes considered it contents for an awful, ominous moment, hefted it high overhead with both hands now. She watched him intently, perched upon the platform, and waited for the moment to pass. His moment. Her moment. Their moment. They'd spent hours preparing this sordid scheme, acquiring the materials, waiting for the moon to rise. She'd be damned if she walked away now. When the whiskered warrior didn't waver, a small part of her began to wonder if he'd chickened out at the last second. She cursed herself for doubting a second later. No way. They were too high up to even think about turning back now. She knew they'd been noticed by someone. It was only a matter of time until the corpo dogs came barking, nipping at their heels. And yet still he stood there spoil sport. She couldn't blame him for hesitating, even if she didn't enjoy it. Arasaka Tower was a building among buildings. A massive escalier are stationed in Corpo Plaza. More than that, it was a symbol. Not just to Night City, but the world at large. One they were about to deface for all the world to see. The view was really nice from up here. He'd chosen the time of their attack well. Nights. She nudged him with one elbow, unnerved by the sudden silence. The hell are you doing? He turned a wide grin on her, azure orbs sparkling with mirth, teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Savoring the moment. Yeti, damn it, she'd felt heart skip a beat just now. She wasn't blushing. Definitely not. Hell no, we'll savor it later. We're on a time limit here. Are you even paying attention? She jabbed a finger up under his chin. You do realize this is gonna PSS off Arasaka, right? Yup. Naruto's expression didn't waver. I mean, it's really gonna PSS off. If they weren't coming after you before, they're gonna do that now. Hey, they sent goons after David and me. They get what they deserve. So speaking, he tilted his head back, set the painkin down, and took a deep breath. All right. I'm good. Step back a little. Well, you don't want to spook you too bad when I break out the big guns. Becca blinked at that. She blinked strong. Big guns heaved at her a thumbs up as the wind lashed at their hair. Big guns. A plume of smoke bloomed behind Becca. Voices accompanied it. She spun to face them and nearly jumped out of her skin. Because, you see, quite suddenly, they weren't alone anymore. Had that been it, she wouldn't be quite so startled. But it wasn't that simple. Nothing with Whiskers was. Now she found herself staring at not one, not two, not three, but 8 other Narutos, each a perfect copy of the rest. As one mind, they bent to retrieve the cans of paint. As one body, each stepped forward to flank their leader, for to each side of him. Eerie, and kinda hot. See, Naruto's grin proved decidedly cheeky. Impish, even, like he'd expected this reaction all along. Told you you'd be surprised. Surprised, yeah, that was putting it too lightly for her. Arasaka, she'd never forget that as long as she lived because it pissed people off and embarrassed them, but destroying one, even an empty one that put a target on your back. Biotechnica didn't have the manpower of Arasaka, but they were vicious little sits and nobody liked losing money. They wouldn't turn the other cheek for this. They'd lash out. And if Sasha kept dragging Naruto into this crusade of hers, he might actually do you all right there. Becca blinked, tugged back from that thought at the last instant. No, she was not. She knocked back another bottle for courage and scowled. Where did Whiskers wander off to anyway? I thought he'd be here. Sasha crossed one leg over another, utterly unrepentant. Maine snagged him for a job about an hour ago. Teach, course he did, the jerk. Still, that made things easier. They could have it out without him here. Listen here, kitty cat, she jabbed a finger against her stomach. Don't think you've won this. It isn't about winning. Sasha took the jibe in good spirits. He saved my life and gave me a reason to live. That earned her a particularly surly scowl. Is that why you F him? Her smile didn't waver. I did. Loudly and happily. I like him. Yes, she squinted at her. Good for you. I like him too. And I saw him first. Sasha poked her right back, utterly unfazed. If we're going by that logic, Gloria saw him first. Rebecca flinched despite herself. So she'd forgotten about David's mum. Gloria was cool and all, but she'd given her plenty of chances. If she was going to hide away like a coward, well, that sucked, but she couldn't wait forever. Let her make a move if she wanted to. If not, no. Don't go there. She stamped down on that thought and shook her head, setting her hair swaying. My point stands. I called dibs and I don't like to share. Share? Sasha smiled, a slow, satisfied smirk that dimpled her cheeks and lit up her eyes. You don't know, do you know about what? She tilted her head. About those shadow clones of his. The clones? Her brow furrowed, not quite comprehending. Those copy things, what about them? They're good for pranks and sit and hit. So Sasha leaned in. They're useful for other things too. Things we tried this morning. Other things? Her eyes widened. Oh, that Kankiwai beach. Think about it. Sasha elked her lips. Becca took a deep breath. This means war. Sasha strutted away, hips swaying. Then war it is. His head hurt. Maine wasn't sure why, but it ached something fierce. This damned migraine had crept up on him for the last week now, slowly but surely, growing stronger every day, and now it was tugging and twisting at his temples, grinding his gears at the worst possible time. Like a jackhammer banging off behind his skull. He couldn't think straight, couldn't aim his gun, couldn't even function. He'd thought he was all right, that he wasn't going to have another attack. Not here, not now, not in the heat of a firefight. A bullet whistled past his head, snapping him out of his daze. Right. Maelstrom. He remembered. They'd tracked some of the bastards down, gone to crack some skulls. That had been the plan, at least. Turned out the bastards were ready for them, and they'd brought friends. And this headache had him cowering behind cover like a coward. He hated it. Main Naruto dropped down beside him, jacket smoldering from the last round he'd taken, but he remained in good spirits. You good and fine. He muttered, cursing himself for the slight slur in his words. How are you holding up? There's a lot of 'em. The kid cracked his neck. Might take a few more minutes. A lot was that what he called 50 gangsters show-off. Go on. He waved him on. Kick their asses. I'll catch up. The kid didn't need to be told twice. He vaulted a makeshift barrier, burned gold, and then he was among them. Maine poked his head out and watched the carnage that followed. Fists flew,
BLD spattered, bastards cried out. He didn't show them any mercy. He was killing easier now. Not good people but the bad ones. Said he knew the difference. Should that worry him? Sure, he could tell which was which, or at least he claimed he could, but what happened if he ever decided they were bad people? Maine knew the answer. They die. Badly. But that day was far off hoped. Right now they had a more immediate concern, one hell-bent on grinding their bones to dust. Maelstrom weren't nice guys to begin with, they were scum through and through. Most other gangs hated them even more than the Inquisitors, and those bastards ripped out cyberware from living people to save their so-called souls. Bunch of crazies. Night City took all kinds. Still, he couldn't let the kid take all the credit now, could he? He raised his arm, felt metal shift as his cannon came up. He fired round after round in after the kid. A pair of big bruisers went down with smoking holes in their cities. Another jumped the kid and lost his head for it literally. A backhand swipe blasted it clean off his shoulders. Even as it fell he dropped flat, scissored a man's legs out from him under him and smashed a raisin gun into another's groin. Demon, good work. Then the knives came out and he became a golden dervish of death, whirling and slashing with abandon. Cheeky kid was stealing all his kills. Not close enough. He needed to get closer. Couldn't make him do all the work. So he kept firing. Again and again. Round after round. All of a sudden his head didn't hurt so much right now. In fact, he felt good. Really good. He laughed and waded in, firing at the thugs with reckless abandon. Bodies hit the floor. Maine laughed louder. His headache seemed so distant now, little more than a bad memory. Just keep firing. That was all that mattered. No, nothing else mattered. Just kill them all. Rip and tear until it is done. Grenade. Maine heard the warning too late. Saw it at his feet. His eyes widened. A curse formed on his lips. And then Naruto was there, diving on the demon thing without a second thought. Get down. A wave of heat blasted forward. Maine's arms went up and then he went back. Everything became blurry after that. He was distantly aware, his dim vision, of the shouts, the sirens in the distance, the pain in his shoulders. Still alive. He supposed that counted for something. Crazy Maelstrom bastards. What kind of psycho cooked a grenade for that long? No, never mind that. Where was the kid? He found him there, sprawled on his stomach in a pool in street. Something deep inside Maine cracked. He was moving almost before he realized what was happening, dropping down to his knees. Oi, he gave him a shake. Come on, kid, don't do this to me. And then the blonde beast rolled over onto his back, grinning from ear to ear like a Cheshire cat. "Oh kid, how are you alive?" Sage mode. Golden eyes gleamed up at him, half-lidded with pain. Hardened my skin at the last second. Still hurt like hell, though it looked like a hell of a lot more than that. His shirt had been blasted apart and there was an ugly red patch across his E. He could see bits of shrapnel stuck in there, bits that were even now tumbling out as the blonde tightened the muscles in his E. Those wounds at least closed. The burnt skin began to mend as well, but slowly, far slower than it should have. Even he could see that. How bad is it? Naruto croaked out a cheeky laugh where he lay. Are my dashing good looks ruined? You're probably gonna have a scar, even with that healing factor of yours. Demon brat smirked at him. Ladies like scars. Right, sure they do. He blinked and found himself standing in a desert. Liking. What the hell? Since when can you do this always? He tilted his head. Why don't see what the big deal is? Becca absolutely twitched. Naruto saw it and laughed. Anyways, suppose it's showtime. Let's go, boys. Then they moved. Naruto snatched up his paintbrush, flung himself off the roof, and hit the tower running. His clones rocketed down with him, forcing Becca to peer over the roof's edge just to watch. One by one, each began to glow gold, but it didn't stop there. Up and down they went, paint in hand, SNG across the length of the tower's surface. Down again. Some went in circles, while others zigzagged in patterns she couldn't even hope to see, let alone comprehend. No side of the tower was spared. They were painting something. She couldn't see it from this angle. Whatever it was, it must have been big. Had to be else folks just wouldn't notice. Still, what the hell was he making? 9 seconds passed. Becca counted, watching with a smile. Aura, and then, with a triumphant cry and a final FLCK of his wrist, Naruto cast aside his now empty paint can and zipped back up onto the rooftop to join her.
His clones didn't they vanished into so much smoke, leaving the two of them alone once more well mostly alone. A chorus of muffled groans and shrieks answered him. And right, she'd forgotten all about their prisoners. Naruto idly patted a captive's guard's head, heedless of the gagged man's panic or his thrashing as he railed against the steel wire binding him. Just sit still, don't struggle, and I won't have a reason to hurt ya hopefully. Maybe don't move too much, ya wouldn't want you to roll off the roof now, would we? It's a luong drop. Becca thumbed her chin. Might be easier just to kill him. More whimpers ensued, followed by yet more muffled begging. Naruto's response was immediate and surprising. Not this group. Hey, don't go soft on me now. People die here all the time, buddy. Becca shrugged. Dozens a day sometimes. You get used to it. People shouldn't. But they do. She shook her head with a shrug. What cha gonna do about it? Whatever I can. Naruto growled, bless his pure soul. This way of living ain't right. Life is sacred, it shouldn't be thrown away unless there's no other choice, and don't give me that live free or die strong shtick. He reached around and grabbed a captive by the scruff of their vest. This way, we'll have witnesses. I want witnesses. After a lift this city is rotten, then there's only one thing to be done. Becca tilted her head, watching him further as his eyes glowed red. You have to pull it up by the roots. His victim slumped with a gurgle. Teach. Naruto dropped him with a sigh. BSTRD passed out on me. Rest'll get the message. Their remaining captives nodded their fervent agreement. Great. His smile returned tenfold. Becca fed him a sidelong glance. Yup, that settled it once and for all. Definitely. Whiskers was insane. Hot, but insane. She didn't much have a problem with insanity, everybody was loco one way or another down here. Night City was as Night City does and all that jazz. She knew he'd been preparing a prank of some kind even if the details were scarce. But this went beyond the pale. Did you care, meh? Nobody liked Arasaka. Night City was a city of grays. Hardly black and white. Becca liked gray. Sure, it was complicated sometimes. Sure, people were up. Sure, it could be better. But you did what you had to survive down here. Good twoshes never lasted long. If the bad luck or blind stupidity didn't take them out, the gangs did, and when you really pissed them off, the corpos even put out a price on your head. Naruto's was unique in that they wanted him alive for some reason or another. Arasaka might just change that to dead after this, though. Japanese corpos were real big on honor, and he just kicked them right in the S. Sirens wailed in the distance. All right, then. Naruto clapped his hands, snapping her fully back to reality. Guess that's our cue. Shame we can't walk back down. Becca rounded on him, incredulous. What do you mean we can't? Your legs broken or something? Well, I worked HRD on this masterpiece. Seems a shame to walk all over it, you know. How the hell are getting down from here in one piece? Then Naruto's grin grew. Wheel a spotlight snapped onto them from above, bathing the world white. So, corpos must have caught on faster than she thought. This is Arasaka security, an unfamiliar voice brayed from a looming craft above. Surrender or be fired upon. This is your only warning. Let me answer your question with another question. Naruto knelt and offered her his hand in the spotlight, bringing himself eye level with her. Do you trust me? Is now really the time for this? Blondie didn't budge. He didn't say a DMN word. Becca eyed his palm warily. Trust? She shouldn't, but she did. Her hand edged out over the gap between them slowly at first, inch by inch, before she finally found her nerve and took it, fingers threading through his own. His hand was pretty DMN big. She wouldn't mind holding it for a while. Felt like she was holding the sun in her hands. She never wanted to let go. It was a silly, girlish thought, one she'd never say aloud, yet it nevertheless brought a faint tinge of pink to her pale cheeks. Screw it. She'd given Gloria plenty of time. David's mom still hadn't made a move on him yet. If she hadn't, she would. Some said love was war, and while Becca wasn't sure if this was love, she damn well wanted to find out. Her lips parted and Gunship opened fire with a deafening roar. Golden light absolutely erupted from Naruto's back, almost too fast for her to see. For an instant she could have sworn she saw a fox. Yeah, her mind was playing tricks on her again. Whatever the DMN thing was, it was large and big and fast enough to swat the gunship out the sky like some annoying gnat. Then it was gone, leaving the spotlight to wink out of the burning wreck plummeted down to the empty grounds below. It detonated in a fiery explosion. Hot wind lashed at them, blowing their hair back. Becca didn't dare turn around. What was sorry about that didn't hear your answer? Naruto reached up to clasp her hand with his free palm, sandwiching her fingers between his own. Do you trust me? A small, girlish part of Rebecca's soul giggled at the madness of it all. Her giggled she didn't giggle blasted blonde was corrupting her. If she hadn't been interested in him before, she certainly was now. He just smacked a sit out the sky for her. Not flowers or chocolate or any of that silly sweet sit, but simple, gratuitous violence. Made her feel nice and warm, that did. Yes, Becca's tongue finally betrayed her, and Diamond did his face light up. The sight left her weak in the knees in more ways than one. There, I said it, happy now, great. Ignorant of her feelings, Naruto gripped her palm tight, then yanked her up into the air to land on his back. Then don't let go. Wait, she latched onto his neck and shoulders and flared down, not quite comprehending. What do you mean don't let go? Naruto leaped into the abyss with a laugh, turning her words to a terrified shriek. All the world became a blur, but only for an instant. In that single blessed instant before panic truly took over, Rebecca looked back, desperate to at least get a glimpse of what he'd done to Arasaka Tower. She'd never forgive herself if she didn't at least see it firsthand. Her eyes flashed, determined to carve it into her memory, no matter how grainy the footage might be. She wasn't disappointed. Another blink and he was back in the city again. Weird. Maybe he needed some more sleep if he was seeing things. Sleep. Nothing else. That was all. Yeah, just some rest. There was still so much for him to do. He couldn't go and let a little thing like this trip him up. Hell no. He'd be fine. He had promised Gloria. He still had to look after the kid. Still had to get that ring and pop the question to Dorio. He was fine. Just fine. Fine. Maine. Naruto snapped his fingers at him. He was standing. When had that happened? You alright? I'm fine. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow and fought down an awful shudder of realization. No, was alright. Just peachy. It's only a headache. That's good. Naruto raised a soot-covered hand. You mind telling me how many fingers I'm holding up? Then Maine squinted at him. You flipping me off with both hands there? No. That seemed to make him sad, somehow. No, I'm not. I'm gonna need you to lay down. A disbelieving peal of laughter tumbled out of him. That grenade rattle your brain or something? I'm fine. You're not fine, big guy. A finger jabbed at his gut. You are exactly the opposite of fine right now. You went completely spacey during that fight and almost got shot for it. That grenade would have blown you to bits if I hadn't jumped on. Sit down or I'll knock you out and call Dorio. Fat chance of that. He was fine. You're overreacting. I've never felt better. He clapped him on the shoulder and turned to leave. Come on, let's go collect our reward. The blond boy immediately to block him, arms spread wide. He walked right into him and bounced off. A low growl rumbled in his throat, deep and menacing. Naruto glared up at him, resolute. There's something wrong with you. I'm not letting you take another job like this until Kiwi and Dorio take a look at you. Ori. He leaned past him suddenly, eyes alight. Speak of the devil, you have perfect timing. Sit. Maine glanced to the door. No one was there. I'm sorry. He rounded on Naruto, but too slowly. Far too slowly. Clenched knuckles barreled into the side of his head. It was a good punch. He never stood a chance. His body spun to the floor, reeling. Darkness swam in. Gloria glared at her arm. Her arm remained silent and immobile. Of course it did. It was an arm. It didn't have a mind of its own. Right? No, that was silly. She'd watched too many horror movies. She rolled over on her sofa with a pent-up sigh. Am I losing my mind? Sometimes it felt like she was. Even as she spoke, her fingers absently scratched her bare arm, scraping it raw. Demon things still itched like a beach. No, it had gone well past that these days. It felt like she'd dunked the diamond thing in lava. It tingled all the way up to her shoulder now, even when she slept. Reading couldn't distract her long enough. Sleeping on it was no help at all. Wrapping it bandages didn't help either. There was no wound. Every doctor she'd been to had told her something similar. It's all in your head, my dear. Here, take these pills. Drink this. Here, try this exercise. Useless sods, the lot of them. Naruto.
This was all his fault. He'd done something to her. He must have. The next time she saw him, she was going to give him a piece of her mind and demand that he fix it. A knock on her door brought her up short. Hello, someone called out to her, voice muffled by metal. Miss Gloria, is there a Miss Gloria Martinez living here? Her BLD ran colder than ice itself. Yes, there's a package here for you. Package? What package? She hadn't ordered anything. Was it something from David? It seemed like something he'd do. She'd not seen her dear boy in so long now. Maybe he was trying to raise her spirits with a cheesy gift or something. Still, she wasn't about to just open the door to anyone without being prepared. She swung the door open and laid one hand on the sidearm at her hip, ready for an Arasaka ambush, but none came. A weary, haggard-looking man in a blue DLVY uniform awaited her on other side. He moved a clipboard at her. Sign here, please. She scribbled out a signature, mumbled her thanks, accepted the package and closed the door in the man's face. A quick inspection of the package allayed her fears. It was from David after all. How sweet of him. He was risking himself sending her something, but she appreciated the sentiment. Now if only her arm would stop pissing her off. Pausing only to lock the door behind her, she threw the gift down on the counter and stalked to the fridge. A cold bottle of beer awaited her, just the bomb she needed. She'd never considered herself much of a drinker these days, but drinking was the only thing that made her arms stop aggravating. Beep. She paused, bottle to her lips. What was that noise? Had she imagined it? Beep. Beep. Blast it, there was again. Beep. 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 She jolted. Hello, the voice came on again. Run away. She clutched her head and leaned against the wall. It was practically a shout now, a shriek. Leave this place. Gloria gripped her head and doubled over. Shut up already, will you? Remarkably, it did. Great, now she was hearing voices in her head. She didn't have that much cyberware. Surely this wasn't going cyberpsycho. Her arm felt like it was on fire now, which only shortened her already exacerbated temper. Exasperated, she stalked back toward the package and tore it open with both hands. A neat little digital clock awaited her within a timer counting down to 0. Her eyes widened. Gloria's world burst into flame. I'll always remember that day. When the sky turned black from all the smoke. You could see it for miles around. It was that hour, that minute, the moment Arasaka did something so utterly stupid, so heartless, so pointlessly, selfishly cruel and insane that someone stood up and put their foot down and said, no more. Not one more. The day the world caved in. As the world caves in, David saw the smoke first. He heard the sirens second, smelled the ash third, and then he was through, bursting out the alley to see their apartment in all its ruined glory. What was left of it, at any rate? The entrance was gone. No, all of it was gone. Everything. All of it. Every bit a blackened and unrecognizable mess. The ceiling had been blasted clear away, exposing the room to the gray sky above. Dark clouds threatened rain. Smog clung to the air. He stumbled through it, coughing, heart hammering as ducked under a broken beam and worked his way past the rubble. This couldn't be happening. It just couldn't. This was all some terrible fever dream. It had to be. There she was. He glimpsed a badly burnt body sprawled out on the floor, face down in the ashes, missing all but one arm. Worse, he saw wisps of her red hair clinging to her scalp, the tattered shreds of an alto-familiar yellow jacket dangling to his shoulders. He didn't want to see, didn't want to believe, but he did. David skidded down in the ashes next to her body. No, 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 don't do this to me. Breathe. She didn't. No response. Not even a twitch. He fumbled for a pulse and found none. In vain. His eyes widened. Something snapped in the back of his head. It felt like his mind. Please, you can't. She twitched. Mom. A wash of hot air rushed overhead. He looked and saw a familiar vehicle sweeping in from above. Trauma team. Why were they here? No, didn't matter. Bastards had good timing. Landing. Stand clear. A voice blared from the car. Initiating security protocol. Follow all instructions. Two men disembarked quickly. One swung out a collapsible stretcher of some sort and gestured quickly. Place the patient on the... I get where you're coming from. Really? I do. If my loved ones got hurt, I'd be furious too. Running to the edge. Hello, ground, old friend. It was certainly rushing up to meet him like one. Naruto closed his eyes and coughed up a laugh. By the sage, that was an awful joke.
Under normal circumstances, he might have cringed at it. Shame he was too injured to think straight or do much of anything, really. He could feel the wind lashing at his face as he fell, hear it howling in his ears with each passing second. Death grew closer. He could feel the Reaper's scythe at his throat. There was a part of him that just wanted to let go, close his eyes, and let the concrete finish what Sasuke had started. He couldn't do it. "Anin, you don't get to die on me, not after all we've been through." Even concussed as he was, utterly exhausted and with a gaping hole in his ribs, his mind still possessed instinct. More than that, he still had Kurama. The old fox wasn't the sort to roll over and go quietly into that good night. He kicked in and kicked strong, wrestling control their weary body out from under him and pulling them out of their deadened plunge. Fitful golden fire flashed across tattered clothes, mending wounds, slowing their bleeding alongside its fall, until against all odds, he managed to stick the landing. His knees creaked ominously and something howled in his back, but his legs held for a moment. Less so his stomach. What little he'd eaten came boiling back out and his body buckled down to a knee. "Gonna give you the reins for a bit, not feelin' so good, cha." Kurama assumed direct control seamlessly, and with the swap, Naruto felt the fiery agony in his ears recede to a dull ache. "No good and grateful Uchiha. We spare his life and what does he do? Blows a hole through us, then throws us through a wormhole. Some friend of yours." A golden hand touched their ruined ribs and came away bloody. "Should heal soon enough. Hope's so freakin' hurts, feels like someone ripped my intestines and stomped on him. It's going to." Now where are we? While he'd ceded control for the time being, he could still see and experience the world around them. He felt cracked pavement beneath his bare feet, the baking heat of the afternoon suns searing down on his shoulders, the faint scent of something he didn't quite recognize tickling his nose. No, wait. He knew that smell. What was it like? Something was burning. Demon thing was right on the tip of his tongue. They'd landed on a road of some sort. At least he assumed it was one. A sprawling city stretched beyond and before them, looming buildings as far as the eye could see. Strange metal boxes, vehicles hurtled by him one after the other, honking their horns. No idea what they were. Those he ignored. Well, he tried. The voices were another matter. What the hell is he? Where'd he come from? No idea. Chum gunned him down. Someone opened fire on Kurama as another strange metal box raced by. Rounds peppered his glowing body. They stung like a horde of angry bees. He would have ignored them. Kurama had never been the sort. In a fit of pique, he flitted a golden arm outward. BLD spattered his face. He watched one of those strange metal boxes flip, hit another, and cause a domino effect. He had half a mind to ignore that too, until he heard the screams. Damn it. What he saw, the fire and flames, the awful wreck he'd just caused a few yards away. Kurama, I see it, I see it. Don't get your soul in a twist. Weary legs carried him forward at a jog. In a matter of moments he'd broken into a foolin' sprint. He could see someone struggling in the wreckage, hanging upside down in one of those metal boxes cars and thrashing for dear life. Bloody hell. It was just a kid. He didn't seem to be hurt, not by the way he was thrashing about, but what in blazes was he shouting? Mom, he hollered the word at the top of his lungs. Mom, damn it. Wake up, stupid seatbelt, let me go. A woman lay sprawled out on the tarmac only a yard away, covered in BLD. He reached her a heartbeat later. Ouch, this really doesn't look good. He knelt and touched a hand to her bloodied gold jacket. His mind began to whirl as he took in her injuries. Lacerated lungs, broken ribs and collarbone with a cracked skull, mangled legs besides. No stamina either. Amazed she's not dead. The kind of spirit that must take to cling to life even in such a sorry state. He could fix this. Yeah, definitely. Right, I got this. Didn't he just? The thought of failure had him babbling. Move over, Kurama. I just need a few seconds and she'll be right as rain. We're low on chakra and you're barely holding together as is. This isn't a good idea. It's always a good idea to save a life. You'll knock yourself out. Don't care. He grit his teeth and wrested back control. Doing it anyway. Golden hands flitted out. One alighted on the woman's head, another between her breasts. She wasn't breathing. Mouth to mouth it was. No time to be embarrassed. Had to keep her heart beating. Sakura had taught him some basic first aid on that front. It was enough. He just needed to keep her alive long enough for his chakra to the rest. What are you doing? The boy shouted behind him. We need to get her to a dock. Naruto whipped around and glared bloody red daggers at him. You want your mom to live or not? The punk stopped wrestling with his fraying seatbelt. It gave with a snap and he finally fell out the car. It did nothing to stop his anger. Of course I want her to live. Kurama reared over him as he snarled back. Then shut up and let me do my demon job. Sure, whatever you say. Grumbling to himself, Naruto went back to work. He felt life stir in the woman's sisi, a fl cur in the dark. Golden hands wrapped around it, coaxing it back into a flame. Bone popped. Limbs realigned. Her wounds began to close. His head began to ache, but he pushed the pain aside and continued his bloody work. A moment passed. A minute now. He could hear his own heart hammering in his ears, pulse pounding, demanding that he stop, that he pull back himself from the edge before it was too late. Naruto ran to the edge and leaped clean over it with a mad grin. And just like that, the woman jerked upright with a gasp, coughing and sputtering. Not fully healed, not by a long shot with those scratches and cuts on her arm, but she wasn't at risk of being roadkill anymore. She'd at least be able to bandage those injuries of hers. Maybe, hopefully, if her luck held. He saw the fear in her eyes. Confusion. I've got you. He caught her as she flailed at him in a moment of panic. You're all right. I saved ya. Save me. She rounded on him, hiccuping, quivering in his arms. Two was dead almost. He nodded. I pulled you back from the edge. You got a name? Gloria. She rasped, still not quite comprehending it all. Gloria Martinez. Her eyes widened a moment later. David, my son. Where's is he? Little punk's fine. He beamed and jerked a thumb over his shoulder where the baffled boy lay, even now dragging himself their way. He's only got a few scratches. The pain in his skull intensified and he slumped a little despite his efforts. But I'm gonna need you to do me a favor, Miss Gloria. She squinted up at him, trembling a little in his grasp, probably terrified of him in all his golden glory. What? Catch me, would you kindly? His eyes began to droop. I'm about to pass out here. Wait. She fumbled to hold him up as he slumped in her grasp. Who are you? I didn't even get your name right. Those were a thing. He should probably answer her, an Alsit. He was bleeding again. His wound had stretcher. He complied numbly, lifting her broken body onto said stretcher. It would be all right. Everything would be all right. If anyone could save her, it would be Wump. A harsh thud echoed behind him and quite suddenly Naruto was there, eyes narrow, body shining like the sun. He didn't even look tired. He must have run clear across Night City to get here, but he looked fresh as a daisy. A very angry daisy. There was a curious stillness about him, a silence that chilled David's BLD. He walked right past him, didn't even seem to see him, and stopped over Mom's body. Gloria, what happened? One of the trauma team tried to nudge him aside. Sir, please stand back, we're professionals. They choked now as they got a good look at his face. There's a bounty on your head. Funny you should mention that. Those blank eyes turned to face them. I wasn't aware Gloria had a trauma team package. David stilled. That's right, she doesn't. You bastards left her to die on the highway. I remember he did. How could he have forgotten they'd abandoned them on the road, discarding them like so much trash? He'd been too panicked to remember, but now that he had weight. Trauma team didn't do anything for free. If they were here now, that meant these chums either weren't the real deal, or someone else had paid them to be here. Which meant his pistol tore free from its holster and slammed up, safety FL King off with a harsh CLCK. Who are you people? In hindsight, it was only natural for paramedics to freeze up when confronted with potentially lethal force. It was not, however, natural for them to draw their own sidearms and respond in kind. Naruto hummed softly, furiously. You're awfully quick on the draw there. Control, one rasped into a radio. We have them send. Naruto reappeared behind the imposter in a yellow flash, grabbed their head and twisted savagely. An awful crack filled the air. The man fell with a gurgle, neck broken. Even as he tumbled to the floor, his comrade spun and snapped off a shot, only to find it slapped out the air by a golden palm. Then said palm struck him in the city and blasted him into a wall. Unlucky. He got to live. Death would have been a mercy. All this in an instant, less than a fraction of a second. He didn't even have time to use his Sandevistan. Hell, he'd barely had time to blink,
much less comprehend the idea of attacking before it was over. It was humbling, terrifying even, to realize just how lethal his friend truly was. The gap between them couldn't be that big. It just wasn't fair. Alright, Naruto knelt and touched a glowing hand to Mom's sissy. Hang in there, Gloria. You don't get to die yet. A raspy breath arose from her charred zi, little more than a low wheeze. His hand fell away, leaving a circular symbol behind. Was it just him, or was she starting to glow? How easily? Naruto silked his tongue. I healed Might Guy after he used the 8 gates. This is nothing. The stunned member of Trauma Team groaned where he lay, sprawled in the dust. Right. Forgot about you. He scowled. David, be a good boy and watch your mother for a minute. I need to have chat with our little friend here. Still speaking, he grabbed the survivor by their face. Out came a knife. Talk or lose your tongue. So, this was death. Why was it so hot? Shouldn't death be cold? Gloria had always heard it was cold. That there was a light at the end of the tunnel, that sort of thing. But there was no light here. Nothing but darkness. And it wasn't cold at all. The shadows blazed like an engine of fire in her cheek. She could feel each heartbeat scorching her throat. Breathing hurt. The mere act of thinking sent 1,000 needles stabbing through her skull. So hot. Too hot. It felt like her very BLD was on fire. She doubled over, clutching at herself with both arms, but moving only made the pain worse. Was this hell? Hardly. Don't be so dramatic. That DMN dirty voice again. She twisted left and right in search of it, but found no one. Of course you can't. The voice came on again, reading her very mind. You have eyes, but you refuse to see. Rather, you're afraid to. Something shifted behind her in the gloom. She couldn't see it, but she heard it all the same. A chill shot down her spine, cooling the heat in her veins, if only for a moment. Don't turn around. Then again, she'd never been one to listen to common sense. If she had, she never would have come to Night City. David never would have been born. She never would have fallen in love again. She spun about and saw. A massive fox lay sprawled before her, a beast apart, its fur a dark shade of red. 9 tails swayed lazily behind it as it regarded her. Its muzzle had so many teeth, too many teeth, each of which were presently bared in a vulpine grin that made her very soul shiver. An old proverb came to her frazzled mind. Stare not into the darkness, lest the darkness stare back. A little late for that, now, so you have a spark of courage in you. The beast's grin grew, bordering on a sneer. Interesting. Perhaps you're not a complete waste of my time after all. Gloria grit her teeth and stood her ground. Something told her stepping back now would be a very bad idea. What are you, a piece of something greater, one that entered you when you first lay dying? Honestly, it made an annoyed noise. You've been a proper pain in my butt this entire time. I tried to warn you about that bomb, but you just wouldn't listen. Now look what's become of you. Do you have any idea what you've unleashed? No, of course you don't. Red eyes rolled in sheer scorn. Honestly, I don't know what he sees in you. If it were up to me, I would have let you die. Fresh pain racked Gloria's body from head to toe. Or was it her soul? She no longer knew, only that it was the worst hell she'd ever known. A plume of steam fled from her lips as she doubled over with a sharp cry. Her legs buckled and she fell to her knees, clutching herself. Golden flame blazed from her arm and crept across her body, bathing her in radiant light. And then came true torment. Fire het agony burning. Make it stop. What happening to me? The fox gazed down on her without pity. You are becoming something more. Something greater than you were before. I had intended to make the process gradual and avoid harming you, but now I've no choice. You'll perish if I don't do something, even with his help. His voice didn't waver, even when she crumpled over on her side. Or would you rather die? Please, it hurts. If I stop, you will die. He was as implacable as the sun itself and thrice as cruel. Then again, healing means nothing if you no longer have the will to live. Would you prefer that to just roll over and die, since you don't have the courage to face the dawn? The last tattered thread of Gloria's restraint snapped with an audible twang. There. On some level she knew what the foxy BSRD was doing, appealing to her emotions, trying to PSS her off. It worked better than he could have possibly imagined. Gloria didn't erupt, she went berserk. You know, I know you're playing ma, but what the F am I supposed to do now? Ha! Up went her blazing arms, the pain momentarily forgotten in her rage. What am I going to be if I die? Hushi railed at the fox steeped in darkness. Dead damned destroyed a footnote in the paper, an obituary cremated into a bit of ash and left to rot in a jar while my son weeps for me. Her voice peaked further, breaking briefly as the fire alked across her body. Is that all? What was the point in me surviving in the first place? Then silence reigned supreme. It stoked the fires of her fury to new heights. Of the once grand Arasaka Tower, all that remained was an utter mockery. A grinning face leered back at her, carved in mangled mess of orange paint and other eldritch graffiti she didn't understand, but she didn't have to, because there, atop it all, painted in great glowing letters Arasaka. That was a bad pun. Rebecca knew she should feel bad if not for that. Then the corpos he'd tarred, feathered, and roped atop the building. But she didn't. It flipped her SWC. She startled, laughing. Latching onto the back of Naruto's waist with her legs for better balance, she released his shoulders, leaned around, and grabbed him by the back of the head. The blonde made a confused noise, but she didn't give him time to process what she was doing. She had a second enough to glimpse baffled blue eyes, and then her lips him a wet, sloppy embrace. That settles it. She drew back, squeezed him tight, and kissed his cheek again. If we pull this sit off without dying, I'm gonna bang your brains out. Naruto's sputter was sweet, sweet music to her ears. They vanished in a streak of gold. A wise man once said defeating your enemy isn't the only path to victory. You simply need to make their victory so ugly, so painful, so utterly humiliating that they won't want it. And when your enemy no longer seeks victory, then you have won. You have destroyed them, once and for all. Welcome to the circus. You've got a right pair on ya, kid. Thanks. I think Naruto looked up from the couch with a tilt of the head, not quite understanding the slang. That's supposed to be a compliment, something like that. Maine laughed, clapped him on the back and sat beside him. The sofa creaked beneath his bulk. You look comfortable enough. Enjoying the new digs, he cast a quick glance for his surroundings. You mean this place wasn't a bad hideout as far as hideaways went? Dim but not dark thanks to the lights, spacious, yet cool, while avoiding freezing. There was a neat little kitchenette built into the northernmost wall, well stocked with food, drink, anything a man could ask for. Someone had even gone so far as to install a shooting range through that door over there, one stocked with all manner of weapons and firearms besides. Despite his inherent dislike of the latter and Becca's promise to teach him how to shoot, though was beginning to find his footing in this, it was the perfect place to duck away for a few days if ducking was what a man had in mind. Not him. He didn't like the idea of hiding. Yeah, he stowed his grimace and offered a smile again. It's not half bad. Kurama sulked. Still not big enough for me to stretch my legs. Diamond cramped city on that, they agreed. In truth, this place was little more than a bolt hole underground, somewhere to catch a bite to eat, rest his head for a bit and relax. For a man who could wear whatever face he wanted and disguise himself however he wished, this was akin to a game for him. The prank to surpass all pranks. His deeds against Arasaka were already making waves. Big waves. He was the talk of the city. Everyone now knew his work, his face, his name. Rebecca as well. She'd become near infamous for it. She'd still been insufferably smug when she'd left this morning. Wicked little gremlin. At least she understood the sanctity of pranks. They were sacrosanct between the prankster and the pranked one. Did not simply explain them. That was akin to telling someone the meaning of a joke. It wasn't any fun if you had to spell it out for them. If anything, that took the fun right out of it. And he aimed to have great deal more fun yet. Maybe you ought to take it easy for a bit, let the heat die down. Or at least he did, until Maine's words poured so much cold water on his enthusiasm. He blinked, realizing he'd been spacing out. Why, you been busy, kid? The big bruiser leaned back and tapped his forehead. Too busy. Have I? He scowled. Naruto. He lifted his chin to grin up at him and refused to budge. Not here. Not now. Not on this. Is that why you came here, to make me stop? Dorio's partner sighed. How many times have you hit Arasaka since that day? Be honest, now to know. How many fingers and toes you got? I get that you're mad, but buddy, you're no Johnny Silverhand. Was that what he thought? Mad? No. Naruto laughed and cut him off with a shake of the head. You don't get it. No. Maine clapped his hands. Enlightened men. This has nothing to do with me being angry. Because he wasn't. He was well past that. This wasn't about vengeance, not yet. The idiots weren't stupid enough to cross that line. This was about sending a message. Those Arasaka mooks started this when they went after David and me when they made us go into hiding to protect Gloria. I'm just teaching them the error of their ways. Everywhere he could, whenever he would, wherever he could. They took my peace and quiet, so now I'm gonna take things from them. They decide when this ends. Not me. Silence stretched between them. He waited for Maine to respond. When he finally did, the older man caught him flat-foot. You're starting to sound like Jane Wick there, pal. Naruto squinted. Who he's somebody you don't want to be. Maine folded both arms before his broad zihi and stared him down for the first time. Way I hear it, he was a lot like you. Nobody knew where he came from. He just showed up one day. No cybernetics, nothing but his name, skill, and a pistol in his hand. Night City took something from him, and he decided to take something back. He kept taking lives, guns, bullets, day after day. From the gangs, the corpos, everything and everyone that was wrong with this city. You don't say. Despite his best attempts, Naruto found his interest piqued. Sounded like a good friend to have. Is this Wick fella still around, kidno? Maine shook his head, startling him with his vehemence. Don't. Guy's a ghost. A myth. A living legend. He laughed at that. Legends were real. Let me guess the boogeyman close. A finger rose. He was the one you sent to kill the boogeyman. Nobody knows who he is. Someone once said he was the brother of Ol Silverhand, because he looks just like him. Others that he used to work for Arasaka back in the day. Heard he even tangled with Adam Smasher once. Demon near killed him. Oh, he was proper curious now and a bit concerned. What happened next Wick didn't stop. He made enemies and one day he vanished. No one ever saw him again. A large palm came down his shoulder. I don't want that to happen to you or David. Naruto saw a chance to steer the conversation away from his crusade and pounced on it for all H was worth. How's the kid doing? Anyway, great. Maine's grin said he saw right through him. He's getting along well with Lucy. Better than your love life, that's for sure. His face warmed. Low blow. Maybe so. Becca's one thing, she'd jump you given half a chance. But staying away from Gloria's just gonna make things worse for her in the long run. Naruto scowled a little at that. He wasn't so foolish as to think himself invincible in this world, but he knew he was a demon's sight harder, better, faster and stronger than most. He could turn Night City into a charred crater if the mood struck. Not that it would, or that he should. Of course that didn't mean he was about to lower his guard anytime soon. Still, for someone to think that he was weak just because he kept people at arm's length, it riled him more than he cared to admit. Kid, this is Night City. There are no rules here. If you like them both. Just Naruto smashed his fist down on the sofa. The bruiser tilted his head. Hush. Have it your own way. He must have saw the flash of anger in his eyes because the brawler steered the subject to safer waters. Back to what I was saying, you've got Arasaka seeing red. Naruto silked his tongue good. You dyed that last corpo orange and hung him by his toes. Oh, he remembered that one. Nasty BSTRD. Didn't regret it. He lived. Maine flung up his arms. Not the point this crusade of yours has to oi now. A finger rose, you say stop. You're not gonna like what happens next. Ain't telling you to stop. Maine planted both palms on either side of him. Just to slow down. Ease back for a day or two. Go after someone else. When he didn't object, his mentor grinned. I've even got a nice juicy gig lined up for you. And I suppose you want me and Rebecca to handle it. No can do. Maine shook his head. She's busy tonight. And this has to happen tonight, or not at all. There was something more to this. Something he wasn't saying. All right, I'll bite. Who am I working with? Maine looked over his shoulder and whistled. The door swung open. This the guy. Naruto found himself sitting just a little bit straighter as a stranger sauntered into his apartment. For their part, the newcomer seemed just as interested in him. Bright blue-pink eyes blinked back at him within a pale face framed by dark hair and a small smile. She was a slender young woman, yet she moved with eerie grace, light on her feet. Her footsteps barely made a truly drew his eyes were the two strange whisker marks set on either side of her face, but he could tell those had something to do with implants, not natural. She seemed friendly enough. She regarded him for a long moment. So you're the one getting Arasaka's tips in a twist. Her eyes fled up and down the length of him, Considering him, judging his worth. You certainly look like the one on all those wanted posters. When he didn't flinch beneath those piercing eyes, the small shade of a smile touched her face. Maine said great things about you, that you're fast and strong, apparently bulletproof to boot. How much of that is true? Naruto climbed to his feet. All of it. As he looked on, that small smile became a smug smirk. I'm Sasha. She offered him her hand. Looking forward to working you. Naruto. He reached out and clasped it. Her grip felt weak, but he wasn't fooled for an instant. Who knew what kind of implants she had? What's the job? It's simple enough, she preened. A raid on Biotechnica. Nothing big. We'll be extracting secret financial records on COH2 and information on a new immunosuppressant prototype. Kurama absolutely groaned in his mind. Did you catch any of that? Because I didn't. None of it. At all. He wasn't wrong. Those terms certainly left Naruto's head pinning. That last bit went way over my head. Smash and grab, snatch some corpo secrets. She let his hand go and poked his ear. Think you can run with me? CCKY. Not quite as CCKY as Becca and really, who was, but she'd learn. Oh, she'd learn if it's running you're worried about. Don't be. I can pull my weight. Low laughter reminded him they weren't alone. Sure enough, he looked back to find Maine wearing a sit-eating grin. Right then, just leave the two of you to hash out the details. He stood with surprising speed for one so large, tipped his sunglasses down and winked at the two of them, then sauntered away. I'll be in touch tonight. As far as gigs went, it was simple. Biotechnica headquarters was a tall building, simple enough to find. Then again, finding it wasn't the strong part. Getting in and out unscathed, that would be. Sasha still felt confident enough in her scheme. Initially, she had wanted to go this alone, but Maine had been DMing stubborn, and in the end she'd consented if only to get him off her back. Netrunners were dropping like flies these days. Couldn't hurt to have a bit of muscle to watch her back in case things went south. Muscle? Her gaze flitted to the young man walking beside her in the rain. From what she'd heard of him, she'd half expected this Naruto guy to be seen feet tall and carved of pure rock. He wasn't, of course, but that didn't make her any less curious. Kid looked good in red and black, but not the monster the vids made him out to be. He had a third of Night City running scared, another seeing red, and still more hollering his name like he was the next Johnny Silverhand. She stood in a fourth category herself. Neutral. Time and tonight would measure the weight of his worth in her eyes. Was he just a dumb bruiser, or was there a keen mind behind those baby blue eyes? He'd have the chance to prove himself soon enough because, surprise surprise, Biotechnica had guards. Two of them. She ducked behind cover and reached into her pack. Just gimme a minute. Naruto shot past in a streak of motion. Clunk. Sasha's head snapped up and found him standing over their prone bodies. They're out. He sketched a shallow bow. You coming? She climbed to her feet with a sigh. Show off? Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. Want me to break down the door? Sasha sashayed past him, huffing softly to herself. Let's try something a little more subtle. She took a cord from her wrist and plugged it in. Almost a heartbeat later, the doors swung open. See, isn't that better? Naruto found himself whistling, mildly impressed. Neat little trick there. You ain't seen nothing yet. She winked. Wait here a sec. Quick as a flash, she darted inside, vaulted a desk and performed that strange wire feat of hers once more. At least Naruto assumed she did, because not a moment later every camera seemingly went dead. Her mission accomplished, she gave a soft whistle of her teasing him perhaps and waved a hand over the desk. He sauntered in after her, eyeing the dead electronics. Not a bad tactic. He would have just speed blitzed the place and been done with it. Yorin Maine's voice crackled through his ear, causing him to jump. Blasted earpiece. Still wasn't used to it. All right, in and out you two. That jammer ain't gonna hold forever. Yes, Dad. Sasha rolled her eyes. Come on. She made for the elevator. We're headed for the main office. Hope you don't mind cramped spaces. Naruto very much did, but saying that was tantamount to admitting weakness. Great. They rode the elevator up, him with gritted teeth, Sasha humming softly, chewing on a wad of gum. She blew a quick bubble as the doors opened and rushed out, leaving him to follow her. Darkened halls dimly lit by dull red lights awaited him, bearing a myriad of twists and turns besides. Sasha ignored them all. She made for a door at the end of the corridor. Another one of her tricks opened it just like the others. From there they entered an office with a terminal against a great glass window, allowing a near-panoramic view into Night City below. Naruto felt his mood sour all the more at the sight. Wasn't much of a view, really, not the kind he was used to. And more escasos. All these buildings crammed together made him sick. He longed to tear them down. Even now he could sense all the pain and agony and misery in the city, so much so that he had to close himself off from it once more. But he couldn't now, could he not completely? Not entirely. A muscle jumped in his jaw. Him in place, all right. Sasha strutted past him and shrugged off her pink jacket, revealing the skin-tight black bodysuit beneath as she sank into the desk chair. Keep an eye on my body. She took a visor from her pack and set it over her eyes. Pink light danced before her eyes and he thought he caught a holographic "hi" written within as she looked to him. Damn Natal Night City will just keep going, won't it? A snarl tore out of her. People will keep watching the stars, hoping, dreaming, and for what the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, the dead get deader, all of it. She thumped a charred fist against her. That's my reward for everything I suffered. Tears pricked at her eyes. That's why I survived 18 years of torment in this cesspit of a city. The fighting, the clawing, the loneliness, the loneliness. She flung a flaming hand at him, screaming at the top of her lungs. All of it, keeping David alive, so I could rot because the person I trust the most knocked me up and ran off, and now that I've finally found someone else. Kurama leaned in. Are you going to lay down and die like a coward? No, she flipped him off. F that and F you, I absolutely refuse. The fox grinned at her. Then what will you do? That was the question, wasn't it? An answer came to her. I'm gonna get better, find that blonde bee, and I'm going to ride him until he sees stars. Kurama's laughter was the last thing she heard. Her world blazed. Tanaka was waiting for him. Hell, he made it easy. The man's guard stood down and let him past without so much as a word. Naruto supposed he should feel flattered by their compliance. Unfortunately, everything was overshadowed by unyielding rage. He didn't bother to question why they might want to let him into the building in the first place, or that it might even be a trap. He was much too angry for that. Let them follow at a distance if they liked. One move and they would die. He knew better than to take an elevator and so chose the stairs instead. Up he went, 1 floor, then 2, 3, for lost track of them all. Quite suddenly a door parted before him, and there he was. The executive waited him behind a black desk, hands clasped before him. His office itself was surprisingly sparse, save for a terminal bolted to the wall and a wide glass window beside it. The entire room was utterly devoid of ornamentation. Guards flanked the large man on either side, ready to spring into action at the slightest provocation. He could sense their smug satisfaction just as easily as he could Tanaka. These weren't good people. They were proud of what they'd done, arrogant, even. That confidence didn't waver, even as he took a step forward. Hello, is this Arasaka? I'd like to make a withdrawal. Mounted guns dropped down from the ceiling, fixing him in red laser sights. Naruto Uzumaki. Tanaka stood at last, hands clasped behind his back. Thank you for accepting my invitation. He gestured to the lone seat arrayed before his desk. Won't you sit? Naruto bit down on his rage and tilted his head a fraction of an inch to the right. I'll stand right here, thanks. The barrel of a gun seal ked against the back of his head. One of the guards, no doubt. He said sit. It was the last thing he ever said. A fist swung backward and the guard's skull burst like an overripe G. His headless corpse dropped to the floor behind him. Aren't you a marvel? Tanaka leered at him without fear. And all this without a speck of cyberware in your body. I admit, it's made tracking you down quite difficult. We knew you would never surface of your own accord, not willingly at least. Did you enjoy our present? It was him, after all. He hadn't been entirely sure after he interrogated that mook. Clarity was an awful thing. With it came anger, shattering his self-control. He looked back to the window. Air cars rushed by outside, blissfully unaware of the horror that was about to transpire. Nobody cared. Gloria was on death's door. These people had all but killed her, and no one cared. It made him twitch. I won't let you get away with this. Blue eyes snapped into feral slits of red death. I won't let you. Enough of your tantrum. Tanaka raised a hand and every gun in the room trained on him. We have need of your services. Don't make this difficult. And just like that, the rage became a cold one. The fire burned in him still, but it had gone sub-zero. Arctic. Don't make this difficult, Tanaka said. Like it was nothing. Like this was a routine for him, something he did every day, without hesitation. How many lives had he destroyed to get his way? Was he even the first? No, it didn't matter. He would be the last. And so he stepped forward. The guns tracked him, of course he ignored them. I'm only providing one service tonight. Care to guess what it is? Tanaka still didn't realize the danger. Don't be a fool. You're hopelessly outnumbered. Think of all the good we can do if we work together. He kept walking. A bead of sweat ran down Tanaka's brow. Kill me and you'll make all of Arasaka your enemy. I've already got plenty of those. He drawled. What's one more on the pile? You cannot be serious. Naruto pointed a finger at the floor. A mini raisin shuriken appeared at the tip of his finger. He let it fly. It drilled down into the foundations, expanding as it went. The building began to tilt around them. Slowly but surely, the ground gave way. Tanaka's mounted guns wavered for a moment, adjusting their sights to track his silhouette as their world shifted. The very moment, the nanosecond they did, he surged up, tore them from their mountings and flung them at the remaining guards. Down they went, rendered red stains against the wall. Horror dawned across Tanaka's face. You didn't come here to negotiate at all, did you? Naruto loped forward and grabbed him by the throat. What was your first clue? I won't go quietly, fool. They're recording everything. Here are they. Now he looked toward the tilting ceiling and saw a camera there. Suppose that makes this easier. They can watch what I'm about to do to you. Maybe they'll even take notes. He looked back to him slowly, drawing a wisp of diminished sage chakra through the air, hardening both his body and his heart for what he knew he had to do. What he must do. I'm not a fan of slow kills. Never have been. When I do kill, and I prefer not to do it quickly. I'm not one for torture. But for you I'm gonna make an exception. An augmented fist smashed into the side of his face, denting his cheek and shatter in a mess of BLD and cybernetics. Naruto turned the other cheek and smiled at the stunned executive, golden eyes gleaming. Try again. Impudent pup. Tanaka's remaining hand shattered on his chin. The man reeled back with a startled gurgle, gaping at the ruined remnants of his once mighty fingers. His piggish eyes flitted down to the mangled digits, back to him, then to his crumbling hands once more. Naruto saw the precise moment the executive realized the true extent of his folly. He waited, watched that fear grow, turning Tanaka's legs to jelly, taking root deep within the heart of his prey. The realization that he was better than him, that he knew it, that he was going to die. And then, he struck like a soundless viper, burying an arm in Tanaka's gut with, sheathing the limb up to his elbow until he found what he wanted. Well, would you look at that? He leaned and grinned, wrapping his fingers around it. You have a spine after all. Who knew? He tore his arm free, leaving it but disemboweling him at the hip as he went. There was surprisingly little BLD. Remarkably, the man remained standing. He frowned at the hole he'd left in him. Cybernetics really are a crazy thing. That would have killed a normal person. The Arasaka executive garbled something that sounded vaguely like a curse. His very existence irked him. Even now he tried to speak. You don't seem to understand. He grabbed the older man by the hair and swung him around, forcing him to face the window. This city belongs to the people. Not the gangs. Not the corporations. And certainly not you. Light shone on him through the glass. He looked toward it, mildly bemused. Gunships, there were an awful lot of them out there. Tanaka rumbled something that might have been a wet laugh. Foolish boy, I Havian army, do you? Now Naruto pointed to the sky outside. Let's test that. The glass shattered as a wave of golden chakra left him in a rush and assumed a familiar shape loomed just outside for all to see. Tanaka whimpered at the sight of Kurama in all his almighty glory. His men probably did more than that, but he'd never know as a massive arm swept down in a singular sweep. Explosions rippled outward as each hovercraft evaporated in a roaring fire. Some of them tried to sweep backwards, only to be caught and crushed by 9 towering tails. Naruto tilted his head. I have a Kurama. He hummed. Your argument is invalid. Tanaka slumped in his grasp and muttered something incoherent. Not good enough. He wanted to break him. Make him feel the same terror Gloria had before that bomb went off. A shadow fell over him. Kurama's skull leaned through the shattered building, face set in a frown. Naruto, you need to calm down. This isn't you, isn't me, he snapped at him, snarling his old friend into silence. This has always been me. I protect my friends and she got hurt because of me. This BSD isn't getting off easy. I'm going to make him pay for what he did to her. Gloria is still alive. You didn't fail her. Yes. He had. I don't want to hear I blow this place sky high. The old fox heaved a sigh but didn't otherwise argue with him. As you wish. Naruto hoisted Tanaka over his shoulder and ran down the building as it Kurama blasted it to pieces behind him, ran through the alleys, ran up every building he could. All the while he hauled his victim behind him, smashing the man's face down again and again, until he was an ugly bruised, shattered mess. Broken and beaten, but alive for now. He finally reached the top of a escalator and dangled him over the edge. Let's start with your face. No one's going to recognize you once I'm through with you. Tanaka surprised him with a laugh, half crazed. Is this your grand plan? Threaten me, torture me, make me talk? He looked him up and down. Seems to be working so far. More laughter. Had he broken him? Of course it is. The dying man laughed at him. Because that's just what you do, isn't it? Boy, you rush in without a plan, throw caution to the wind. And everyone around you pays the price. He grabbed at his arm with broken fingers, leering through broken teeth. Kill me if you like. It won't change your fate. I believe in the ideals of Arasaka. I'll gladly go to the grave for them. Those hands fell away, submitting to gravity. You think this dies with me? Lord Saburo will finish what I started. You'll never know any peace. Maybe you're right. That got a blink out of him. You are. His head bobbed in agreement. Not everything can be solved with violence. A man needs to be strong, yes, but he also needs to be good. He needs to know when to hold and when to fold when to stand his ground and when to walk away. Clawed finger tightened around Tanaka's windpipe, cutting off his air. But right now, I'm not a good man, and I don't care about consequences. You know they say, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, evil for evil. His grip tightened, rendering the man's next words a strangled string of gibberish. You're going to sing like a canary. You just haven't realized it yet. Golden hands clamped down on either side of Tanaka's head. Tell me. Everything about Arasaka. You killed him, didn't you? The blank look in Naruto's eyes said it all. He'd stalked into the room, eyes vacant, looking half dead. Rebecca knew it at a glance, as if the BLD on his face wasn't enough. She recognized that look, seen it on a chum or two right before they went off the deep end. It was the expression someone wore right before they went cyberpsycho or worst. Problem was, Naruto wasn't insane. He knew what he was doing. What he'd done. He'd already wrought far more havoc than a crazed killer ever could, and unlike a cyberpsycho, he didn't have the excuse of losing his mind to fall back on. She'd seen the footage. They all had. An Arasaka building flattened, blasted to the ground by a giant golden fox. Said fox had vanished into thin air by the time the authorities arrived, leaving an untold amount of dead bodies in its wake. Atom Smasher had arrived on the scene too late, unable to do anything but grumble at the mangled bodies left behind. All of them belonged to Arasaka. 100 dead. No innocence there. Sasha had laughed herself silly at the corpo's plight and promptly gotten blackout drunk. As to the others, well, he'd really done it this time, hadn't he? Meh, not like she'd planned to die old or anything. How's Maine? Becca blinked, startled to find the bloody blonde staring down at her. He was getting BLD all over the floor. For a moment she actually felt a little thrill of fear shot through her. Stupid, she knew. He'd never hurt her. Not so good. Dorio's been keeping him on ice so like you asked so he doesn't wake up and go istic, but that ain't gonna last much longer. And Gloria resting. David hasn't left her side. He grunted at that. Let me see Maine alone. Her grimace became a scowl. Dorio ain't gonna like that. Didn't ask, don't care, buzz off. He stormed past, making for the clinic door. Hey, she snatched his arm and yanked him back. He must have really been out of it, because she was actually able to. There's time to talk. How you holdin' up? Naruto blinked at her. He blinked strong. Me? She planted a fist on her hip. You see anybody else here? Something flashed through his face, gone before she could seize on it. I killed a lot of people today. You did. She nodded. How do you feel about that? I don't. He said slowly. Not really. She balked. I was so angry at the time, but now I just feel tired. He heaved a sigh and palmed his face with his free hand, blue eyes peeking between his fingers. They're not going to stop. I think that's what Tanaka meant before I killed him. This is only the beginning. It might take months or years, but they'll never stop coming until I stop them. Cut all the heads off the Hydra, you know, every last one. He was rambling now, laughing the laugh of a man pushed too far, too strong, too swiftly. I'm gonna have to kill more people before this is over. It's the only language these people seem to understand, and I hate it. His voice broke under the strain and something cracked in her heart. She drew him closer. Just Semir. Damn it. She hated being short. Sometimes the best she could do was hug his midriff. I'm not the best at this sappy sit, but you can talk to me if it helps. You're holding a murderer. Beach, I've killed people. 2 loads. He looked away. I'm getting BLD all over you. Still don't care. I'm never letting you go. Speaking of which, she yanked his face down to hers and smashed her lips against his. How's that better, Becca? She kissed him again. He groaned. Will you quit it? No, I'm gonna keep doing this until you calm down. Look at me. She pinched his cheeks. Everyone is fine. Maine hasn't lost it yet. Gloria's alive. We didn't lose anyone. Barely. Still counts. She gave him a savage shake. So breathe. Sasha's off getting smashed and Pilar's keeping an eye on David. Kiwi was laughing her butt off when she heard what you did. She's in there checking Maine over right now. Naruto opened his mouth to. Sure, he ked her a half-hearted thumbs up, curious to see what came next. She went limp in the chair. A moment passed. Then another. Then Nias Maine's voice drawled in his ear. She's got the data. Now haul, but for anyone catches you. Sasha wasn't moving. Naruto fumbled and touched a finger to his ear. Maine, she's still in the chair. Is that supposed to happen? Sasha Maine's voice crackled with a hint of concern. You alright? Sit jammers down. There could be no denying the panic in his tone now. Get out of there. We already got what we need. Security's gonna be on your but in a minute. What was he missing here? Naruto nudged her. Oi Sasha, what are you doing? Her eyes snapped open. One hand reached up and tore her visor free. The other touched a finger to her earpiece. Sorry. She whispered softly. Sadly almost. Maine's voice rose. Don't you dare. The line died in a crackle of static. Naruto caught her wrist as she stood. Have you lost your mind? He expected a struggle. Resistance, at the least. Instead, he received something else. Sasha slumped in his grasp. Securison. She rattled off the name, face blank, eyes gone glassy. It's a product Biotechnica made, one they've been using for a while now. Painkillers with undisclosed side effects. A brief blink as she seemed to recall what she'd read or seen from memory. Gradual neurodegeneration. Side effects will not be disclosed to the public. Product will not be pulled from the market. She bit her lips so strong it bled. I should have known. I shoulda known. Those bastards, those absolute bastards. After all this time, you're not making any sense. Don't you get it? His words seemed to reactivate Sasha. In an instant she was in his face, shouting at him, railing, struggling in his arms. They killed my mother. She took those pills for pain. They rotted her brain literally until she died, and I didn't even know until now. Well, her words numbed Naruto so much so that he lost his grip on Sasha's wrist. The second he did, she dove back to the desk. Out came the wire from her hand again, this time plugged into an adjacent socket. The screens before them changed, indicating an upload. A slow one. What are you doing uploading this to N54 News? Sasha's face was writ with cold fury as she wrapped the cord tight around her wrist. It left her enough slack to move, but bound her to the desk all the same. That didn't stop her from taking the charges out her satchel. I'm gonna take those a-holes down, make 'em all pay, then blow this office to bits. Her eyes met his. With or without you? Naruto didn't budge. There's still time. You can run if you like. Run. Her words were a thorn, pricking painfully in the side of his pride. He crossed both arms before his whose running some unidentifiable emotion flashed through Sasha's gaze. You don't have to do this. He did. He knew he'd never forgive himself if he walked away now. And so he lowered his arms, walked to the door and waited. His patience was soon rewarded. Someone detonated a breaching charge on the other side and burst open in a rush of flame. 3 soldiers waded through, guns in hand. Robot drones. Sasha yelped and ducked behind the desk, grabbing something from her belt as she fell. Naruto heard a soft silsike, then a grenade whistled up over the desk and through the air, spraying smoke in their faces. He heard the trio pause, no doubt taking a moment to let their optics adjust to the haze. They were still adjusting when he burst through it, shining like the sun. Rasengan, he caught the first dead center in the city with the spiraling sphere. It rocketed back out of the room before its compatriots could even hope to react. By the time they realized their peril, it was too late. Bullets spattered harmlessly against his face and he as he waded in to grab them by their heads. FLCK of his wrists smashed them together, rendering them so much scrap metal. They crumpled like toy soldiers and fell at his feet. 2 more stepped up beside their fallen fellows, only to find their guns torn from their hands. He kicked one away, grabbed another by the arm and flung them over his shoulder. They hurtled past the desk and struck the window, shattering it in an instant. The drone didn't scream as it fell to its deaths. Machines never did. One punch put the other down. See, he grinned back. That wasn't so strong. Sasha poked her head out. What the hell are you? Bullets crashed into his back, drawing an annoyed grunt from him. More mechs came to avenge their fallen brethren. One after the other. Good, he wasn't satisfied yet. Machines didn't think. They didn't feel. They weren't to be mourned. They just broke beneath his fists. Shattered like so much glass. It was madness. Sweet, glorious madness. He fought through swarms of drones not in minutes but seconds, battering them down, hammering them apart, tearing them asunder, all while their bullets ripped harmlessly at him. Rip. Yes, that was the word. Rip and tear. And then Sasha was there, vaulting over his shoulders like a cat. Idly he noticed claws sprouting from her finger claws she soon put to devastating use. She slashed the head clean off one drone, caught the head of a second between her thighs, wrenched her body back and slammed it down near the broken window. A pink and black pistol tore free from its holster. It spat once. The mech didn't rise again. Laughter burst out of him as she savaged the sole remaining mech with another swipe of her hand. Kitty's got claws. Sasha stood and giggled a little at that. It was a tired, exhausted sound. Thanks for staying with me until the end. Warm lips ghost the outer lobe of his left ear. A hand settled itself against his back. He heard her whisper, "Bibi, Naruto. I had fun." Then she pushed. He fell. Time unwound in slow motion as his body pitched forward out the window. Naruto saw every raindrop silhouetted against the night sky, felt the hammering of his heart. A soft chime reached his ears a moment later. Every fiber of his being tensed as realization dawned. The explosives. Sasha meant to die here. She knew he would survive the fall. The same couldn't be said of her and the explosion. The chime faded. A dull thump rattled the building. Fire lit his world orange. Idiot, there was no time to think or plan, only to react, and he had less than 3 seconds. All the time in the world. He kicked off the surface of the building, channeled chakra to his feet and surged back up through the broken window. Sasha wasn't facing him. She didn't see him coming, didn't even know it was him until he grabbed her by the shoulders. The faintest glimmer of shock had only just began to manifest upon her pale face when spun her around and wrapped her body in his Kurama's cloak. He saw the precise instant her body shimmered red and gold, shielding her from what was to come. Then he kicked backward, launching them away. Fire kissed his feet as his ears rang. The explosion hit a moment later and launched them clear into the air. For a single blessed instant they hung there, suspended in the air. Then gravity grabbed them. Crunch. Breath burst from his lungs as his back struck something, a car, and broke his fall. He heard Sasha gasp in his arms. Again now, as they tumbled free. They'd landed on an abandoned road, a raised one leading out of the city. He managed to glimpse that much between the pouring rain and his own pain. By the sage, the pain. It was enough to make a man black out. He almost did for a minute there. Steeling himself, he closed his eyes against it and willed his back to heal, muscles mending, spine growing strong once more. He wasn't sure how much time passed between now and then. It felt like seconds. Could have been minutes for all he knew. I did it, Mum. Someone sighed. I got the bastards, just a little longer now. When next he opened his eyes, Naruto found Sasha standing on the edge of that raised road, gazing up at the burning Biotechnica building. You a-hole. She wouldn't look at him. Why didn't you let me die? It would be been so much easier. She was standing way too close to the edge for his liking. Sasha, could you step back? Why? She turned to face him at last. I'm fine where I am. Those blank eyes said otherwise. His heart twisted at her pitiful expression. She really hadn't expected to survive this. She'd been thoroughly prepared to die. And now that she hadn't, I said, step back. He pushed himself to his feet, grabbed her wrist and tugged her away. Sasha didn't like that. Not one bit. Let me go. What are you doing? Saving your life. He growled. I don't want you to tough. He didn't dare let go of her now, for fear she'd fling herself over the edge. Whatever you're feeling, it's okay. Let it out. Her hand cracked across his face, snapping his head to the side. Naruto let her. This is Night City, she raged, slapping him again. Everyone dies here, even you. Everyone. Why couldn't you let me go out on my own terms? I don't have anything left to live for any more. Why couldn't you? He caught her wrist as she wound up to slap him again. This close, he could feel the anxiety bleeding off her. So much water from a broken sieve. She was a broken mess. Adrift. Bereft. Without a purpose. Then give her one. I won't die. He patted her head with his free hand, fingers running through her damp hair. And I'll give you a reason to live. That's a promise. So don't worry, alright, everything's gonna be okay. He saw the exact moment Sasha's resolve broke. She hiccuped. A lone tear ran down her cheek, nearly invisible in the air. Liar, nope. He beamed at her. I've died before. Wasn't for me. Her laughter was weak. You can't just say no to death. You kidding me? He laughed with her. That's the only thing we say to death. Not today, and I never go back on my word. See you on events. Sasha took a deep breath. And then Mother Fr beach sit where Kurama whistled in his head. Not bad. I hate them. She wasn't done. Far from him. I hate those Biotechnica bastards. If it weren't for them, my mom. He let go of her wrist and gripped her shoulder. I know what it's like to lose a parent, you know. She stared at him for a long moment. You do, don't you? More than she knew. Feel better now? Oddly enough, yes. She turned back to the burning building office high above them. Not a soul inside. No one to see it burn but them and the broken drones. This'll bring those bastards down, right? It will. And if it doesn't, an idea dawned. BGMI. He walked to the edge of the road and held out a hand toward the building. This was stupid. Foolish. He knew he shouldn't be doing this. And yet Kurama didn't argue with him. But Sasha made a baffled noise. What are you? Kurama's skull swelled around him. His body blazed gold once more, blue eyes bleeding red as gigantic jaws opened wide upon either side of him, the sudden act of which had Sasha scrambling back with a yelp. He gave her a quick glance, smiled, then looked back to the building. Black light burst between his fingers. Small at first, then it began to grow. He held the tailed beast bomb between his hands for a moment more, letting it form slowly so she could see it, all of it, every bit of it. A fourth of his full strength should be more than enough to bring down a building. With a shout, he let it fly. The Biotechnica building didn't so much explode as it did burst. He struck the tower right at its foundations, obliterating them in a single blast. With nothing to hold it up, it buckled under its own weight. Floor after floor. Level after level. Not satisfied, he blasted the structure again, quickening its collapse. It began to burn despite the rain, the flames reaching high and hot. The entire structure crumbled in less than a minute. Naruto watched the towering mushroom cloud rise into the sky and smiled. Limbed in the flames, he turned to face Sasha once more. Think that'll slow him down? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again, lips moving now as she tried and failed to find words. He felt a burst of some unidentifiable emotion form in her heart. By the time he managed to make sense of it, it was almost too late. Sasha stepped in, grabbed him by the collar, seizing the fabric in an ironclad grip. Naruto caught her wrist in his hand. Her eyes met his, lashes still damp from the rain. He could have stopped her. He had all the time in the world and she was waiting, giving him in and out. He let go of her wrist, let her draw him and press her mouth to his. It was different than Becca. She'd surprised him back at Arasaka, all energy and ferocity and mad giggling, the two of them high on a good prank. Sasha simply closed her eyes, stood there and held on for dear life, clung to him, really awaiting his response, whatever that might be. Eventually, he gave her an answer. She drew away, staring intently at him. My place. It was as much a question as a plea. Or yours. The apartment door crashed open. Naruto stumbled backward, gripping Sasha's waist with one hand, the other tangled up in her hair, pulling her closer as her tongue tangled with his. Her own were too busy with his belt and jacket. She tore the latter, gave up on the former when it wouldn't budge, and wrapped her legs around his. They barely made it into the bed. He tripped backwards onto it and Sasha rode him all the way down, straddling his waist, lips leaving his at last as she reared back. He made a frustrated nose until she reached up behind her shoulders. Her back bodysuit fell away, pooing at her hips, exposing the creamy skin of her bosom to his wanting eyes. His throat went dry. Idly he saw her scars. Sasha covered them absently with one arm and looked away, cheeks pink. Sorry. Don't be. He tugged her arm down. We all have them. That remark sparked something in her, something wild, feral, desperate. She tore off the rest of her clothes, followed by his, with a bit of help. Her body was cold, chilled by the rain, but that they solved that problem soon enough between the sheets. Within moments she settled herself atop him and began to move. Slowly, taking her sweet time. Tormenting him with every movement, every smile, every lingering embrace, the absolute temptress. He repaid her in kind. His hands came up to cup the swell of her breasts, causing her breath to hitch into a reedy little gasp, one that soon became a moan as he pushed himself up to embrace her fully. Her hands weren't idle either. She pulled him closer, all but grinding against his lap now, pushing away every barrier as she rode him harder, faster, without restraint. On and on they went at it until, her cries growing sharper, until Sasha broke first and cried out, arching her neck back. Naruto's world burst into soul-shattering white. You haven't experienced real power until you've felt the force of 10 suns exploding in your face. Wait. Did he actually take a guess? Eye for an eye. I don't want to move. Sunlight warmed his face, and yet that was Naruto's first thought upon waking. He was just so darn warm under all these blankets. Hot even. It enfolded every bit of his body, enough to make him want to move, yet simultaneously so comfortable that he protest again. Finish that sentence and I'm gonna bang your brains out. His mouth silkhead shut, followed by the ghost of a smile. How is that even a threat? If I'd enjoy it there was the whiskers she knew. Because then I'd call in Sasha and we'd double-team your arrogant butt. Heat speared up those whiskered cheeks and his grin grew. I feel strangely compelled to protest now, you know. Dumbass. She elbowed him, but didn't protest when his arm looped around her waist to reel her in. Come on, let's check on Maine. Naruto didn't let go of her, keeping her tucked into his side as they walked. Fine by her. If a bit of cuddle time was the price she had to pay for calming him down, then so be it. Sides, he was warm and she had him all to herself. I'll take that, Sasha. This was her victory. Entering the clinic proper, they found Maine sprawled across a bathtub, bulky bod nestled in a cradle of ice. The whole gang was here to look in on their leader, even the ever-elusive Lucy. All eyes on them. No one dared so much as crack a joke. Kiwi looked Naruto up and down and looked like she might say something or might not. Impossible to tell with that faceplate of hers. Dorio, however, took one look at Naruto and practically fell to her knees. Please tell me you can fix cyberpsychosis. Because that's what we're looking at here. Hey, Becca buelled in from the side. You crazy Arasaka's already got it out for him. If they find out he can fix it like this he'll have no peace. Dorio turned a pleading look on him. Becca gave him one of her own, even if she already knew what would happen. Naruto took a deep breath and released her. Laid both hands on Maine's head. Closed his eyes. Now, this might take a few minutes, then his body blazed gold. I see. 100 dead. Thank you for your time. Rest assured, they will be avenged. Saburo Arasaka closed the call and turned to face the table. Or rather, the individuals assembled before him. The old man exhaled slowly. And then, let us begin. Memory is the gift that keeps on giving. It is meant to be shared by many, not hoarded. We go through them,
wear them, use them, as one might an old shirt. Yet no matter how ragged that old thing gets, we cling to it. Such is the power of memory, the joy of nostalgia. Open you heart. Unseal your mind, see the world. In this shirt, how is she? Gloria heard voices swimming in the darkness. She's healing quickly. Should be fine in a few days. Might even wake up soon. And Maine, time will tell. A weighty pause followed the words. I did the best I could. She had a feeling she knew the reason for her rapid recovery. Kurama remained smugly silent. And then quite suddenly awake, Gloria jolted back to wakefulness with a gasp and immediately clutched at her skull. Fire in her head, heat in her heart, and it hurt, it hurt, it hurt. She thrashed her way upright, fell off her cot to the floor, gasping for air, fingers grasping blindly. Water. She needed water. Here. Someone pressed a bottle to her lips. Aha, release, sweet, blessed sustenance. At last Gloria latched on without a second thought and drank greedily, then regretted that too because she choked. Her singed lungs gasped for oxygen and someone thumped her back, clearing her airway. It drew small circles between her shoulders until finally, the ache receded. She blinked away stars from her vision until she found she could breathe again and saw a familiar blonde bee beaming back at her. Welcome back to the world. Naruto hummed. How are you feeling? Awful. She croaked. This hurts. Feels like I'm on fire. He coughed and looked away. About that she squinted at him. What no thing, a bit of heat's to be expected. He swept a glance for the clipboard at her bedside and hummed a little. Kurama did good work, but it was touch and go there for a bit. That was a nasty explosion you took. She remembered that. Fire and BLD. The awful feeling of her entire body baking in the heat. About that, what did you do? Not so much me as Kurama. You have chakra now. He made a slightly exasperated noise. Not that I had any say in it, I regret nothing. His voice again, it was real. Was she imagining things? Had the dream been real? She wasn't going cyberpsycho, was she? She squinted at him. The hell's chakra? Naruto grimaced. That's a long explanation. A fresh ache rattled Gloria's body as she tried to speak and failed miserably. Her throat was dry and scratchy. It wasn't just difficult to speak now, it was painful. She tried for a gasp of air but only succeeded in scorching her lungs further. I can't breathe. His face smoothed out. Just relax. I've got you. Her smiling savior pressed a hand to her throat and she felt the pain recede, pushed back by that strange golden light of his. No, Waith wasn't glowing. This wasn't him. It was her. Gloria looked down and her eyes absolutely bulged. A tiny noise of disbelief fled from her lips. Because you see, she was shining, literally burning gold. Had she a mirror, she would have realized her eyes were burning like the sun, searing a stark shade of amber red. Her body shimmered with ethereal light, appealing black marks etched against the flame. And yet, for all that was no pain. Tell that to her brain. She panicked. Fire? Why am I on fire? You're not. Not really. Naruto caught her hands as she tried to pat herself down and held them. That's just Kurama at work. Fear gave way to anger deep within her. Explain. She flung up her arms. How are you like this? How am I? Who even are you? Really? Her let her go and scratched the back of his head with a rueful laugh. It's a bit of a long story. She grabbed his arm and yanked him close. Start talking. All right. He steered her back to the bed and plunked down beside her. Suppose I owe you that much. Just like that. Wait, what was he doing and why was she so sleepy? He touched his forehead to hers. Let me show you. The world began to blur around the edges. And she saw Naruto's myriad memories. All of them. Each bit. Everything. Gloria fell into them all. It was a sudden and abrupt thing. One moment she could feel Naruto's forehead against hers, in the next, the world lurched and she found herself tumbling, falling, yelping into the black. A hand caught her and reeled her back. She caught sight of a gleaming golden glint in the gloom, one that rapidly resolved into the blonde himself. We'll start at the beginning. He granted her a small, sad smile. Once upon a time, there was a boy and a fox. The world rippled around them. One moment there was naught but the void, in the next they stood before a burning village and a familiar massive kitsune rampaging through it. Kurama made an annoyed noise. Not my proudest moment. A man and a woman sealed the beast into a boy. The smallest of babes, a lad with blonde hair. And then they died. She saw it all.
Each painful moment heard their last, dying words. It hurt more than she could ever explain, made her think of leaving David all alone. She stepped back, shaking her head. I don't want to see this. I don't want to hear it. Take it away. As you wish. Naruto waved a hand and the scene blurred. The boy was grown now, sitting alone on a swing, watching from a forlorn distance as other children played without him. He was a human sacrifice. Naruto hummed beside her, whiskered face betraying nothing. In my tongue, a Jinchuriki. The boy was alone for much of his young life. Many thought him the monster he contained. But he didn't let it break him. His hand moved again, and so too did the scene unfold, like pressing the play button on an old vid. The boy tried to give a girl with pink hair. Opened back up without Kurama's keeping it closed. Which meant he was probably bleeding all over the nice lady he'd just gone through all the trouble to save. She really should bandage those wounds on her arms. He didn't fancy of the idea of his BLD mingling with hers. Might be side effects, I swear. It's always you and redheads, right? Right? Miss Gloria asked his name. Hadn't she getting strong to think? He'd really lost too much BLD and chakra. Namius Naruto sleepy time now talk ladder pretty colors. He pitched forward and landed facey first into her bosom. Gloria caught him, said something he couldn't hear. Kurama heaved an aggravated sigh. Sleep well, idiot. Naruto blacked out with a bleary smile. His troubles had only just begun. Implant, what the hell's an implant? Little stranger, play it again. The footage on the screen wound backwards, seemingly in slow motion, an explosion unfolding in reverse. Keen eyes watched every second of it. Fire flashed through the air. Bild spilled. The carnage. The mayhem that followed. Bullets flew through the air. Bodies hit the floor. And their stop. Saburo Arasaka considered the frozen flame that followed with a keen eye. He was ancient beyond measure, and seen many things in his many years. This brought him to silence. A man falling out the sky was something to sneeze at perhaps, but what followed caught his eye. He watched, squinted now, as a man wreathed in glowing gold knelt before a broken woman's body, and healed her. More than that, he restored her. Took a broken body and breathed life back into it. No cybernetics whatsoever. Could the same not be done unto him? Restore his vigor, mend this failing body of his. He steepled his fingers and laid his chin to rest atop them. That fool Tanaka had begged his aid in searching for their missing Sandevistan, a task he'd given little heed until now. This held promise. Fear was power. So too was fear of the unknown. Everything of value was only a flag blowing in the wind. And wind is fear. He knew he could inspire fear in others, but this intrigued him. It was only a matter of time before he surfaced again. But if something were to happen to him, he could simply send Atom Smasher. The notion was tempting, but no. Not yet. Smasher had a tendency to live up to his name, and he wanted this merchandise intact. Saburo pressed a button on his deck. An intercom CL-ked softly. He spoke into it. Send that oaf Tanaka to me. I have a task for him. So it began. Her arm ached. In hindsight, Gloria Martinez knew it was an odd thing to focus on given her near brush with death, but there it was. Blasted thing just kept bothering her. Even now she ran her nails over her right arm, scratching at it as she paced about her apartment. The limb didn't quite hurt, but it wasn't a pleasant sensation either. More a tingle of a sort really. Pins and needles. That sort of thing. Like she'd slept wrong on it, somehow, though she knew she hadn't. Painkillers couldn't scratch it. And speaking of scratching, just what did you do to me? Her eyes strayed to the dozing boy man sprawled across her sofa in a heap. Naruto had yet to awaken. He'd slept all day and showed no signs of stirring. She'd bandaged his wound as best she could, treated in case of infection, and left him to rest. She'd gone all she could without taking him to a hospital, not that she could afford it, but the rest was in his hands. Maybe he'd have answers once he woke up. She tried putting another call through to David. No response. Poor boy. He hadn't been quite right since the accident yesterday. He blamed himself for it, which was responsible of him, but that responsibility weighed on him. She feared it might crush him. He wanted to protect her, to provide for them, as his father hadn't. No, she didn't want to think of that rat BSTRD. He'd left them. He was gone. She didn't even want to remember his name. Gloria didn't want David to end up like him.
She wanted her boy to make something of himself. That was the whole reason she was killing herself like this in the first place. And if it weren't for him, she wouldn't even be here. Once more her gaze strayed out toward the prone blonde. He looked so worn, his brow writ in some silent dream she couldn't see. He'd saved her life. It was very sweet of him. Downright romantic, really. Even if he had bled all over. No idea who he was, though. She'd searched all through the usual channels, even asked Maine to hit up Sasha and Kiwi on the side, for all the good it did her. Nothing. Naruto was a ghost. A faint groan hit her ears. Gloria heard it and darted toward him, snatching up a washcloth as she went, running it under the sink as she went. His forehead was hot to the touch. He was still burning up. She didn't know why. She laid the towel to his forehead. "It's all right. You're safe." He muttered something under his breath. "Hurts, I know. She cooed softly and ran the cool cloth in gentle circles around his face. "You're all right." It seemed to help, if only because his whimpers eased off. "Just rest." Her arm tingled again. Gloria looked down at it and balked. What in the world? Much to her disbelief, her fingers burned with golden flame and myriad black marks. As she looked on, they rushed up her wrist, sheathing her arm, followed by her shoulder. It burned with golden flame. Fire! She panicked and slapped at it with her free, only to realize there was no pain. "Calm down, Gloria, you haven't slept since yesterday. You're imagining things." She shook her head and scrubbed at her eyes with the back of a hand. "Counted to 3. Open them." When her vision cleared, her limb was just as it had always been. Nervous relief rushed through her in a cleansing wave, followed by a tremulous laugh. Must have imagined it. People didn't just glow like that. Not without some kind of heat implant, which she didn't have. Must be imagining things. Naruto rolled onto his side. She reached out to steady him without thinking. His head hit her lap. Gloria stilled. She hadn't given any thought to romance since David was born. Since his father ran. Hadn't been much time for it after, and honestly, she hadn't gone looking. And yet, a tiny seed of hope sprouted in her sister as she did his hair. He was still out cold, wasn't he? Gloria looked left. But not a soul in sight. Of course there wasn't. She chastised herself a second later. This was her apartment after all. David had left for class hours ago. No one would see. No one would know. She was a grown-ass woman and capable of making her own choices. But did she dare screw it? She dipped low and delivered a swift peck to Naruto's cheek. "Get well soon," she whispered. "I still need to thank you properly." He groaned a little. It sounded suspiciously like okay to her ears. He'd hit her cheeks. Someone knocked on her door. Gloria jerked upright and all but vaulted the couch to reach it. She pressed her face to the door and squinted through the slot. Her eyes widened. A hulking figure loomed just outside, easily twice her size. But she felt no fear. Why would she? He was a big softy. It still didn't explain why he was here. Maine. She swung the door open and tugged her robe a little tighter. "What are you doing here? I'm not decent. Heard you had a bit of a dust-up." He gave her a once-over but made no move to enter. Still a gentleman, this one. "Mind if I come in?" Sure. She stepped aside for him. "Thanks. Thought it'd be easier if we picked up the sandy ourselves after what you've been through." He ducked in, and too late, she realized he wasn't alone. "Don't worry about us. We'll be out your hair." Flowers. It did not end well. No matter the circumstance. She saw the hurt flash across the little lad's face before he concealed it with a cheery smile. Her mothering instinct nearly kicked in then, and there it would have, had she noticed someone else as the scene played out. Another girl watching him from afar, a shy little thing with dark hair and pale eyes. Curious. "Take a walk around if you like." Naruto sounded almost amused. "It's an old memory." Gloria granted him a quick glance, but did just that. "Don't want anything to do with him." The pink one was ranting to a blonde girl wearing white and purple. "He's the dead last. My mom said he's a monster." Naruto's younger self pretended he hadn't heard, but he must have, else this wouldn't be in his memories. She tried to touch him, but her hand passed right through him, as though he didn't exist. "This was your childhood." She looked to him. "They treated you horribly." "Some of them did." Naruto turned away with a wistful expression. "Some didn't." The boy failed to realize it at the time.
Maybe things would have been better if he had. Gloria followed his gaze. Sure enough, the shy girl was gone. She'd vanished to parts unknown. A small sigh slipped from her lips. She didn't know what she was missing. The bemused blonde waved his hand and the scene wavered rapidly. She found herself standing in a forest as the blonde boy, there could be no doubting it was Naruto now, stood over a beaten and battered man. Mizuki, his memories cheerfully supplied the name, hoisting a massive scroll under his arm, grinning like a loon. A wounded man wrapped a blue headband around his head, etched with silver. The boy wanted to be acknowledged by those who rejected him. So he decided to become Hokage. To prove himself. Here at last, a small, sheepish smile plucked at the corner of his mouth. It was an interesting time for him. Events moved rapidly after that. The images wavered again and she found herself bombarded with sights and sounds she'd never experienced before. A masked man with silver hair, a bell test, learning to work together with his teammates, one of whom was the pink one. Gloria knew she shouldn't hate a child, but she felt an ember of anger spark in her CC whenever the pink one Sakura turned him away, or worse, struck him. As to the other one, Naruto hummed. I almost forgot how much of a broody bastard Sasuke was in the beginning. Suppose he had a reason to be. The world rippled again when next it came into focus. He stood over him, a younger Naruto, skewered by needles. But even so, he was my friend. What followed frightened her. The boy appeared to die, perishing in young Naruto's arms. He hunched over him, went berserk. The crimson chakra, the feral transformation, the absolute rage etched across the boy's face. It was but a glimmer of what she'd seen before, the raw cry of a child who'd lost something oh so precious and hadn't realized it until the very last moment. He looked past her, through her, to the masked enemy beyond in a hall of frozen mirrors. She saw his fury. The hate. I'm gonna kill you. He lunged. Naruto stepped between them, waved a hand and the feral scene flitted away. Gloria gulped and found herself shying behind him. It doesn't bother you not anymore. He shrugged. The past is the past. Was it really? Besides, Kurama and I are on much better terms now. He winked her way. You wouldn't be alive if we weren't. She almost didn't want to believe him, but it was true, wasn't it? She could feel Kurama's chakra in her, placid and content, not at all like the raging red maelstrom she'd just encountered. It burned within her like a warm flame, powerful and pure, a shield against all the horrors of the world. Clearly they must have come to terms at some point. But how, when, where, why? She wanted to know. She needed to know. She had to know. Naruto stood beside her, waiting oh so patiently. She looked to him, unable to hide her curiosity. How much more is there? Plenty, he laughed, delighted by her. We haven't even gotten to the Chunin exams yet. Chunin exams? She wrinkled her nose at him. What are those, some kind of test or something or something? He looked to be on the verge of a hysteric cackle. Don't worry, I'll show you. In an instant his body burned golden to match her own. You asked who I am, so I'm gonna show you every bit. He offered his hand, one glowing golden god to another. Slowly but surely. His gaze met hers evenly and she felt heat creep up the back of her and into her cheeks as she flushed. No more jumping around, I promise. In fact, her heart hitched at those words, beating a mile a minute. I'll show you every bit of me if that's what you want. Did he even realize what that sounded like? And yet, he still offered her his hand. Gloria's gaze slowly flitted up to meet his. Kurama jabbed her. Remember your promise. Right? She had said something to that effect, hadn't she? Then her fingers latched onto his palm and curled within his own. She blinked once, steeled herself and yoink with strength she didn't even realize she had. She dragged him forward and smashed her lips against his. It was a brief embrace, all things considered. A promise of intent as much as anything else. Yet she felt him respond to her for a moment, his fingers gripping hers before she drew away. Not much, just enough to make her intentions clear. Her lips brushed his as she spoke, looking up at him longingly. Show me. Ah, his face was so diamond red. Take that 1 point in her favor. He coughed, a little embarrassed. I'll get right on that. This way this time. When a flustered Naruto turned and strode away, she walked with him through his memories hand in hand. David saw them. Oh yes, he saw them indeed. He'd stumbled into the room to check on Mom, half expecting to still find her a burned, charred mess. She was not. Mom had clearly woken up at some point, and stranger yet, she'd healed, impossible as that sounded. Now, despite the fact that Gloria Martinez was wearing nothing more than a threadbare gown over her bandages, she was snuggled up against Naruto in bed like he was kinda giant teddy bear or something. And he was holding her right back. Cuddling. Despite that, they were, the both of them, out cold. Dead to the world. Body to body, forehead to forehead. Honestly, if they didn't have their clothes on, he would have sworn they'd been repress. Do not think such thoughts. He didn't want to imagine his mom doing anything like that, ever. Like, EW. Really, there was only one conclusion the poor boy could possibly make, a sole, singular outcome that sat remotely well with him. He snorted once. That blonde bastard better be good to Mom. He'd pop a cap in his butt and chase him down if he wasn't. In the end, David gave up and stomped forward, unable to help himself, nor contain his own morbid curiosity. He dragged a blanket over their shoulders to keep them warm. By some miracle the duo didn't stir. That was his cue to get the hell out of Dodge. He didn't want to be around when they woke up. Nope. He muttered under his breath, racing away. I didn't see it, kid. At this point, you'd need a crowbar to pry those two chums apart. Still don't get it. I'll sum up how your mum feels in one word: mine. Hesitation is defeat. Gloria reluctantly opened her eyes. After having them closed for so long, it was a painful shock to her system to simply see again, let alone comprehend the world around her. Had the bed always been this soft, or her body this tense? Was the sun always so? Didn't want to. The sun was out and he could guess it was early morning. At least a quick glance at the nearby clock confirmed his theory. 7 in the morning. I didn't mean to get up this early. Shoulda slept in. Eventually, he had to move by dint of getting a cram and rolled over. Mistakes were made, and they were most marvelous indeed. Someone's bare bosom was pressed into his, infinitely warm and soft, so very yielding. Bigger than he'd thought they'd be. Memory proved swift to return, and with it came sensation, a most pleasant soreness which began to pervade every inch his body. He focused his eyes away from those gorgeous valleys and found a familiar face waiting for him, serene in slumber. He'd left one hell of a hickey on her neck, and judging by the way his hurt, he had the distinct feeling she'd left him a present of her own. Perhaps sensing the weight of his gaze, she hummed in her sleep and tucked her head just under his chin. His arms betrayed him and held her that much closer. So this is what it feels like now that he knew what it felt like. He never wanted to let it go. Never let her go. And then tongue betrayed him. Sasha, her eyes fluttered open, reminding him of a lazy cat. There was no surprise in her eyes, no fear, no brief moment of tension. She looked up, saw him, smiled now, and leaned up to give him a long, lingering embrace. He found himself returning it as she pressed against him. Her hands reached up to thread through his hair, tugging him closer. You're warm. Naruto sputtered a little. Apparently she liked to cuddle. Who knew? She drew back, looking utterly at her ease. Help me find my clothes. He honestly thought about it for a second, then thought better about it, sprawling himself back in bed. Not cheeky bastard. She rose with a yawn and stood slowly, granting him a rather unimpeded view of her backside as she padded across the room. He couldn't help but notice that she was walking more than a little crooked besides. Oh geez. He heard her mutter to herself as she stepped over a fallen dresser. An actual dresser. When had they knocked that over? We made an awful mess last night. You good? I am very good. She looked over her shoulder and winked, the faintest hint of a smirk dancing across her face. You were better than I thought you'd be. His face went red, even as hers lit up in an impish grin. She knew how to tease. That settled it. She was a keeper. Then again, we didn't exactly use protection now, did we? She turned to face him, underwear in hand. He made a strangled noise. I don't think we did. Well. She shrugged a bare shoulder. The lazy motion did quite interesting things to her bosom, more so as she bent down to shimmy into her panties. I'll let the chips fall where they may. You're being awfully blasé about this. What can I say? I'm in a very good mood. She stalked back to him quick as can be and crawled back into his lap, pinning him down as a cat might her prey. If a bun in the oven is the price I have to pay for getting my revenge against those Biotechnica bastards, then that's a fair trade. Besides, she tossed her hair as she sprawled herself atop him.
I always said I'd be twice the mom that mine was, and I won't make the same mistakes and leave any child of mine alone. He knew that tone. It drew a sigh from him. You're still angry about Biotechnica, aren't you? Yup. Naruto knew that tone of voice. And you're not done with them, are you? Nope. She lowered her head, kissing him along the jawline. You took out their main building and I'm grateful for that, but the executives and their cronies are still around. A gasp trickled out of her as he took hold of her rear and planted her in his lap much more firmly. And they're corrupt. All of them are. They'll try something like this again in the future, mark my words. I'll be keeping an eye on them. You said they were corrupt, that most people working for them were corrupt. Right, I did? She leaned back as he began to massage her hips, tracing his hands across her skin in slow, smooth circles that had her biting lower lip to stave off a whine. I know you're busy with Arasaka and all, but I'd really appreciate some help with these bastards. Guilty by association, were they? He'd be the judge of that. But she was right, this wasn't over, not by a long shot. A thought occurred to him. So what now? We go steady or something? Sasha smiled and laid her head against his ear. No need to be so old-fashioned. We had fun. Her fingers flitted downward, stroking his ribs. I wouldn't mind having fun again. She blinked up at him through long lashes. Simple as that. We can see where this goes. Sounds good. That was a lot simpler than he'd thought it would be. Sasha must have seen his expression, because she gave him another embrace, a quick peck on the cheek. Night City gives and she takes. Enjoy what you have, while you have it, live in the moment, and don't worry about the future. Her lips pursed suddenly, drawing down in an adorable pout. Although, Maine left a message. She tapped a finger to her skull, indicating she'd received a call from the man himself. He's got another job for you, if you're interested. Her gaze flitted up and he could tell she was reading some message through her cyberware that he, having none, couldn't see. Maelstrom. She wrinkled her nose in disgust. Nasty guys. Drug runners, murderers and psychopaths, among other things. Seems they've been getting too big for their britches. Someone's put up a bounty to knock them down a peg, but it's weird. They asked for you and him specifically. Nobody else. It did sound strange, but maybe he was getting popular. We should probably get out of bed. Sasha grinned. We should, but we're not going to not yet. And why is that? She kicked off her panties. You make a compelling argument. He didn't leave her apartment until late afternoon. By the time Rebecca came around, he was already long gone. Rebecca was nobody's fool. Sure, she might be a little crazy, everybody was here, but she wasn't stupid. She knew Sasha had bagged him when she opened the door, she just didn't know how at first. Sasha was more than happy to take her to a bar and tell the story. Therein lay the rub. She wasn't making any effort to hide her satisfaction. She was acting like this was some kind of foregone conclusion, like she'd already won the freaking lottery or something. That irked Becca. She wanted to play that way. Did she? She may have won the first battle, but there would be many more to come. Maybe that was possessive of her, trying to claim someone who admittedly hadn't shown that much interest in her. So she was protective of Naruto. So what, she liked him? They CL Kid had moxie in spades and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. He wouldn't take sit from anyone, and when it came time to put up or shut up, he would be right there SW with the rest of them, better than the rest of them. There was just one problem. He was too nice. Night City didn't do nice. It ate nice for breakfast, took nice people like Sasha's mum, chewed them up, and spat them back out. She didn't blame her friend for swearing vengeance on Biotechnica. She'd be a hypocrite to say otherwise. Hells, she'd go right on the warpath herself if anything happened to her bro. But there were limits, things you just didn't do. They were pissing off the corpos, no problems there, but they were ticking off too many at once. Arasaka was enough to deal with without those bio bastards nipping at their heels. And they'd leveled a freakin' building defacing a SKSC or top to bottom was one thing. In a bit sup, Gloria. Becca flashed a grin as she slipped in after him,